think I'll give it a go this time. So I'll just wait until maybe somebody like Joanna's coming up. So maybe Joanna could do it, or maybe Tracy when she gets up here as a co-host. But I'm sure 1 or 2 minutes won't make any difference. So a little bit of discombobulation, as somebody used to call it. Slightly unexpected, but I guess it was Twitter getting fed up of info about the fundraiser, maybe, or just Tim's voice, maybe. But we are now about to move on to Tracy's few hours, and I'm joining Tracy for the first couple of hours. So we shall see what's going on. It's going to take a little while for us to get people in, although I can see you're all mounting up quite nicely, so that is good. And we have Tracy as a speaker at least. Hi, Tracy, are you there?
Hello, good day. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Tracy. I wonder if everybody else can.
Well, I hope so.
That was a bit of weird timing, wasn't it? It's, still, so I've decided to leave all of the timestamp business to you. I'm not sure if Tim finished it, but you might be slightly better at it than I am, because I've never done it before.
Well, I know it's 9 a.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. UK, 4 p.m. Kiev, and the date is Monday, the 17th of June. So I hope that helps.
I think that should be enough, shouldn't it? Excuse me, got mint in my mouth as well. Yeah, so I think that's enough. Everybody else can figure out the rest from there. I think knowing Kiev time, everybody should be able to know where they are based on Kiev time and figure out backwards or forwards, or mainly backwards, I guess, to what time it actually is. But I'm quite amazed at myself today. I actually woke up rather early, and it was a sunny day with the prospect of being warm. So I don't know what's happened. The cat is sitting here next to me looking completely stupefied. What the hell is this woman up to? She's saying. Anyway, so how are you today, Tracy?
I'm stressed out. How's that for an answer?
Oh dear. What's got you all stressed out?
No, I mean in a nice way, really. So Robin did say that cooking, excuse me, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to eat my last mouthful sandwich. I'm trying to do 6 things at once. I haven't had a chance to eat anything. So I'm trying to do that in between, because I have been on the hunt for fresh ingredients to make borscht with, because I made an online order. And what do you know, Terry fella? They go and send me not really quite the freshest ingredients.
Oh, flipping heck. That's a nice old English phrase, isn't it? Yeah, that's typical of them. But so you've had to go out yourself and actually venture outside the house.
Yes, I've had to go peopling, so it's been an adventure in more ways than one. Like I say, Robin did say it was an adventure cooking borscht, and she was right. I will send you a picture, actually, and I've taken pictures for you all of my basket full of fresh ingredients. I have a huge basket full of fresh ingredients, and I cannot wait to get started later on today after co-hosting. I'm very excited. So I had to go and do that, and of course I had to go before co-hosting, which meant in the UK the busiest part of the day. And I normally do not venture out if I'm going out in the busiest part of the day, because 1, I don't like peopling too much if I can help it, and 2, well, I live in a tourist area and we are in summer, so of course we are, and I live right near the beach too. So, of course, there are tourists everywhere. So I tend to try and do these things in an evening after co-hosting if I'm going out. But anyway, nevertheless, I managed to get it done. It only took me 2 hours, and you know it, the supermarket is only round the corner. So that's how much of an adventure I have had.
That's adventurous enough for me. But yeah, I ended up, I'd run out of cat food last night, and not that I ate it myself, I'd run out of cat food for the cat, and ended up doing a Tesco whoosh delivery that got here in 20 minutes. So the cat was able to stop clawing my legs and staring at me in the way that she was. So she got fed in the end. But that also saved me having to venture out. I topped it up with a little bit of milk and something to eat for today, and some lemonade to go with my Pims. It obviously knew that the weather was going to be good today. So later on I can sit there with the Pims.
Well, that's very good indeed. I'm glad you managed to get some lemonade. In case you don't know, she's talking about a drink that needs lemonade with it, a nice drink that people have in the UK that I don't drink. Anyway, we are getting populated nicely again. Thank you very much for coming back, everybody, so quickly. I'm getting us a new title, which I think is pretty much done. So if you haven't already, and well, if you have already, please do it again. Go ahead and give us a retweet. Let everybody know that we are back up and running. And we will be diving into the news, all the related topics to Ukraine from around the world. Anything that you would like to talk about related to Ukraine, now is a perfect opportunity to come up to the panel, raise the topic for discussion, or ask your questions, for example, or even just bring us your comments. And if you don't like to do that, well, then you can send us messages in the background, send us a DM. DM Terry Fella and I, and we would be happy to read out your questions or comments anonymously, of course, unless you give us permission to give out your name, that is. Oh, one clarification I have to make. So I was talking about the Minister for Strategic Industries the other day coming to the UK to show off this project that they're doing. And I've spoken about some of the things that they've been doing, this manufacturing freedom is what they call it, the Manufacturing Freedom Project. And the name is Zbroja, which apparently means weapons or like armaments, you know. So I said I thought it meant freedom, but I was obviously getting the name of the project and then that translation for that mixed up. So I just want to make that clarification. And thank you to the people that sent me that clarification, by the way. It's very much appreciated. See what a community we have here, Terry Fella. We all plod along together, helping each other out.
That is good, because we are quite willing to admit that we don't always get it right. We try, and we can be very trying, but we don't always manage it. Are you there? She's gone diving out the window, or had a cup
No,
of
I'm
tea
here.
or something.
If you can talk for a minute, Terry Fella, whilst I do the title and sort the nest out, I would appreciate that. Sorry.
Oh, okay,
Thank you.
okay. I didn't notice that the title was changing. Yes, it sort of changes before our eyes, as it were. And particularly as we've had a crash, and oh my God, there's nothing in the nest either. So a little bit of behind the scenes activity having to happen. So I was up with mockers this morning for a while, and I know there's been a few booms and bits and pieces going on. I also know that she does really like the stuff that Tim White tweets. He does a daily update. If you don't follow him, he really is worth following. His Twitter handle is TWMC Ltd. And so today, 845 of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and he's got a tweet that goes on for a fair bit of time. He goes into quite a bit of depth, which is good. he includes the numbers. I won't read the numbers out just yet because that will be something that we do in a little while. But one interesting little fact, why are there fewer missile attacks by Russia? Ukraine's military spokesman, Dmytro Pletenchuk, told RBK it's partly due to the relocation of the Russian naval base to Novorossiysk, while missiles and charging systems stayed in Crimea. Well, they've got themselves a bit discombobulated by the looks of things. But also, Caliber missiles themselves are less effective, and that's because we are able to shoot those down a bit better. But meanwhile, there are a few bavovnas going on in Belgorod, but naturally conflicting reports. Nothing to see here, no injuries. It's an electrical fault, it was a cigarette, all the rest of it. Yeah, the usual excuses and rubbish that we normally hear. So, have you managed to change the title, Tracy? I can't see any updates to it, but
Yep, all done.
oh, and you have a few things in the nest for us. That is wonderful. Aren't you a good girl? You can go to the front of the class.
Thank you very much.
Actually, I used to have to go to the front of the class for being a naughty girl. So I had to stand by the teacher's desk for ages and ages. And then after a while, she decided that I was a bit too distracting for all of the kids. So then she decided to put me at the back of the class so that none of the kids could actually see my antics. Yeah, that was a few years ago.
I thought it was the back of the class when you're naughty, not the front of the class.
Oh, she used to want me right by her side so that she could keep an eye on me. But of course, every time she walked around the classroom, I'd be turning around and making silly faces and doing God knows what. So I think that happened every year as well. I have either had a desk out by the teacher or right at the back. But there we go.
But there we go. You know what I was going to start doing? I was thinking that I thought would be good if every time we come on, like just go to Spotify and maybe just post one or two of the Spotify podcasts, you know, the MriyaReport Spotify podcasts, and just say to people, announce it in the space that you're doing it, and talk about, I don't know, whichever one you like, if you want to talk about them, or just say that you're posting them. So that's what I thought I would start doing, and then, you know, and remind people that you can use the link on any of the tweets to then get access to the list of all the others straight away. So it doesn't actually play when you click it. Sorry. You know, you can click it and then you go to the list on Spotify and you can pick whichever podcast you would like from that list and then play that one there. What do you think?
I think that's an excellent idea. And to point out that you don't actually have to subscribe to Spotify. You can get a free account and you can still listen to stuff like MriyaReport. And there's quite a few other bits and pieces that you can listen to as well. I've got a little collection in there. But yes, I've now permanently got my Spotify taking me to the MriyaReport page. And it'll always just give you the whole list and you can browse through, which is great if you particularly like listening to certain sections, but it's too late in the day for you, or it's at the wrong time of day for you. I don't think everything gets put up there, but any of our special guests gets put up there, and any special segments, maybe surprise segments that we have. Sometimes we get surprise guests coming up, or maybe the likes of War Doggo or Scruff or whoever, and that can often make it worth putting in the nest as well. So yeah, I think that's a very good idea to do that daily. The other thing that I want to put up there daily now is my little thing about disinformation, which I will have to go and find because it was there and of course it's now gone missing again. But the 4Ds of Russian disinformation. So I shall go and find it, and I recommend everybody goes and has a look. save the image, print it out and stick it on your fridge, because I think that will be very useful. And I'm going to slowly start adding to it with things like Beefeater's comments about disinformation and stuff as well. So yeah, Spotify and disinformation. Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, because the more Russia loses, right, the worse this disinformation, propaganda, psychological operations, all those narratives, even old narratives, new narratives, narratives somewhere in between, I don't know, all of the above. It's only going to intensify. Sorry if you can hear me, just closing the door. It's only going to intensify the more that Russia loses. You know, the more that they lose on the battlefield, then the more that they are going to be pushing their propaganda, especially in what they consider to be Western media. But of course, it's not just solely Western media, is it? You know, it's all around the world
It
that they're
is,
doing this
yeah,
with warfare.
yeah, it is literally all around the world, because they're also doing it in all of the countries that they are currently in favour in, because they are trying to really convince everybody in those countries to stick with them and to not believe what the nasty West tells them, and to make them even more keen on helping them to spread out this disinformation. And just yesterday, I came across an article. Well, it's actually a PDF document called Operation Overload, which is a new, well, they often try to do it, but as you say, particularly when they're losing, which I think they are beginning to feel not quite so sure of themselves at the moment. So hence they are really bombarding us at the moment. So I think it's all the more reason to keep mentioning about this disinformation and trying to explain every now and again how to spot it, how to avoid it, how to counteract it as well. So, yep, I will go through that, I think, at some stage to you. Anyway, back to you, Tracy, for now.
Well, it's always good to keep that reminder, to keep reminding ourselves, because, you know, we are emotional people after all, and we say don't act on emotions, but sometimes it's difficult, no matter how much, you know, you think you know. And that's why, you know, it's so important to have everybody here in this space as a community, to learn from each other, to have those debates in a healthy way, where we can talk about these things, learn the information, look at the angles, etc., the workings of it, the mechanisms of how they've managed to do that or are trying to do that, but yet without actually amplifying their narrative or their disinformation or their propaganda at the same time. You know, and that's why, like I say, this community here is so important. And because we get that perspective from many people across the world, and from people that have lived in countries nearer to Russia, sometimes previously been under the Russian boot, you know, as well, all those things, it gives us that opportunity to have that healthy discussion and debate without, like I say, you know, amplifying their message at the same time. And it is only going to get worse. The intensity, I keep thinking it can't increase anymore, but I'm going to stop thinking that, because every time I think that, it just increases more, maybe just in a different direction. I think that's the only thing, you know, the direction that it takes. But certainly, it's the more Russia loses, the worse it's going to get, particularly around conscription. I've noticed that, and they're really trying to, you know, I was looking out for that thanks to the warnings from Ukrainian intelligence community, even commanders in the field. One of them gave a warning saying that they've actually witnessed Russia they must be near to temporarily occupied territories, wherever they are, I guess. One of the commanders of the ground troops, and he was saying they've actually witnessed it themselves, of the increase of Russia making these fake videos of conscripts being dragged off the street, and then they just turn out to be filmed in temporarily occupied territories all the time, or they just turn out to be normal incidents, like that one with the police the other day, when in actual fact what happened was a member of the public was attacking a soldier, and the police was trying to sort it out because they were having an argument and a fight. So it wasn't anything to do with, you know, conscripts or anything like that anyway. So, yeah, it's definitely going to get a lot more complicated. There's going to be a lot more things like that that really press on people's fears, natural fears that people have got. That what we have to do is get that correct and accurate information out there and help to allay people's fears by doing that. That's the way that we counter it. But you think you're making headway, don't you? But then the Russians just intensify, so you just have to follow that in a different direction. So that's the job that we have to do.
Indeed. And I don't know if you were listening when I was on this morning, but I know Will was listening a little bit, and I came across a BBC newsfeed item that I was absolutely horrified by. It was all about those people being nabbed off the street. So if any of you want to go and find my tweet, which is in my profile somewhere, might be a bit further down now because I've been retweeting things since. Yeah, complain to the BBC, send to discredit it, put in some ridiculous memes for me, like Will says, but also let the BBC know how disgusted you are that they are following the lines of Russian disinformation so obviously and so plainly. And if anybody is up to it, to actually counteract what they're saying in full, because we know that the way that they are talking about conscription happening isn't what is actually happening, that there are many good ways of the conscription, the mobilization, whatever you want to call it, happening, proper authorized routes, and there's actually loads and loads of people voluntarily signing up to do it, and people heading back to Ukraine to sign up to be in the military as well. They will get the proper training, they can choose where they want to go to a large extent, and they don't need to be as frightened as that article tries to make out that they are. So, yeah, the propaganda is really going to be stepping up, particularly, I think, over the next few months as more equipment arrives for the troops, as more artillery gets kindly posted over to Russia, now that Ukraine is allowed to head over that way. And of course, we've got new, I say we, I mean Ukraine. Ukraine has got a new sea baby type thing called, I've forgotten what it's called, Tracy. Something quite amazing. The Stalker. That's it. We ought to get a picture of that in the nest as well, I reckon.
Yeah, I saw that, an article on that, actually. That's one of the things that I thought we should talk about. I thought it may be interesting if it's not already been spoken about. And thank you for going over that, Terry Fella. I was listening this morning, but I wasn't really listening intently because of course I was busy doing all the other things, and then on top of that, what happened, my coffee machine has broken. How dare the coffee machine break, and I'm having to drink that disgusting thing that British people call coffee, that excuse for a thing called instant coffee. Can you believe that? It's like medicine.
My God, Tracy, I'm amazed that you've actually made it here. Having to cope with that stuff. I mean, I'm a proper British lass, me. I drink tea, and I like my normal cup of tea, black tea, milk, no sugar. I like it like the builders have it. So, Ashley, you're a builder, Tracy. How come you're not drinking tea?
I've never liked tea. It's disgusting. Unless you talk about fruit tea, I quite like fruit tea, particularly ginger and lemon.
Oh no, that's not tea. I mean, we could have an argument here if we're not careful.
That was very Yorkshire, that, Terry.
That's what happens when I get cross. I'm only joking, cross though.
I better not ever get you cross then. The northern lass will come out in you. We better stop talking about this, otherwise people will be thinking, what on earth are they talking about? All these people from around the world that
Well,
don't
I was
understand the
going to
weird
say
British ways.
I could come out with my dad's quote, which I don't think even you understood. We're going up look for. No, wait a minute. We're going up lane. What for? Load 'em up. We're shoveling cart. Where's cart up lane? Have you heard that before, Tracy?
Aye.
My dad used to say that to your Latin teacher and see if she could translate it for you. My dad didn't do languages either.
You know, the northern, what we use up north, it's more like old English. That's the difference, and you know that's why, and you know yourself speaking, people think that you're just talking slang, but they don't realise it is to us. It's like a completely different language, and they don't seem to get that. It's almost like I say to people, if you think of like real Yorkshire language, real Yorkshire speak between each other, which people call slang, which I refuse to call slang because it's not. It's what we're brought up with. It's our old language. Just because the language changed doesn't mean that means the way that we speak is slang. And of course, when you have that accent, it's really difficult to form vowels in different ways. You have to put your tongue in different places with your vowels to make the different sound for the different accents. So it is like learning a different language, because you do have to put your mouth and your tongue in a different place every time you say that word. And that, of course, is confusing, especially when you're tired. You go to your natural way of saying it, and then sometimes try not to do that, and then the word ends up half and half, which can be even more confusing.
It's like when you tell people the name of the very first book, or what is officially the first book in the Tales of Narnia, the Chronicles of Narnia. It's Took Lion, Took Witch, and Took Wardrobe.
Aye, that sounds right to me. What was I thinking the other day? We say, because I'm from, you know, really far up West Yorkshire in the Yorkshire Dales, on the border, right on the border of North Yorkshire, actually. So we say a lot of different words that come across, even down from Newcastle. So we don't even say water, we say water instead of water.
And of course, up north, we always have to say bath. I tend to say bath and glass and things like that now, because I've lived down south for too long. But that's where people abroad can sometimes get a little bit confused when we come out with our. It's after I've had a couple of drinks. I'll have another glass and go and have a bath. But anyway, how do you reckon our numbers are doing? Do you think? Whoops! Do you think we've got the numbers coming back up again?
Well, everybody's coming back nicely, as they always do, because they are dedicated like we are. I was going to say, language absolutely fascinates me, and I cannot wait to go to Ukraine and just hear like different, because obviously with Hopeful, you're going to different areas in the van with them. So I'm hoping to be able to and I've got a real keen ear for, well, just anything like that. I pick up sounds in music. I can hear musical instruments in music that other people can't hear, you know, because it's all mixed in with everything. And I've got really acute hearing, and I can pick up languages and all sorts of different things like that. So I'm hoping to be able to hear like the differences in, you know, the language when people speak that, and then just from the different regional variations, because obviously being going all across Ukraine, like in the east and the west, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to pick that up, because I'm fascinated to learn about that. You know, I'm sure I'm going to be able to hear the differences. We have had people tell us that there definitely are regional differences to the accents and even to the way words are spelt. So let's see if I can hear some of that. That will be interesting to report on, don't you think, Terry Fella? Or is that just me finds it interesting?
No, I think that will be very interesting. I mean, if somewhere as small as the UK can have so many different regional accents, and ours is supposedly all one language, although there is Welsh and there's Scottish as well in some places, but like Cornwall, people from Cornwall sound very, very different from the people in Yorkshire. And of course, the other thing with Ukraine is they actually have several different languages in the first place. There are the folk that used to speak Russian, that some will still speak Russian, and some speak full Ukrainian, and some apparently they chop and change almost automatically as they're talking and discussing, and they can still understand each other. I love the lilt of the Ukrainian language. It's much softer and much gentler than the Russian language. Even though I don't understand it, I can still tell whether it's Russian that's being spoken or Ukrainian. And
It's
Jenny, come up
very,
to join us.
it's very melodic, isn't it? I think. And you know, from listening to President Zelensky's speeches and all other things like that, and looking at the translations, I'm starting to recognise some words now that are used, you know, often. And actually, it's really interesting how many words are very, very similar to the English, and that makes them easier to pick out as well.
It's a fact. It's a fact. That's
Jenny?
one of the things that he often says. He'll do a sentence and finish with "It's a fact," and it's almost the same in English as it is in Ukrainian as well. So I can spot that.
Jenny, welcome.
Oh, thank you. We were rudely thrown out of Twitter, out of the space at the end, so I didn't.
What were you
say
saying,
goodbye.
Jenny?
You must have been misbehaving, Jenny, I reckon.
No, it wasn't me. I think it was Tim, because I was quiet as a mouse, and he was. I think that they were like, "You have now done the begging. You have begged enough, you poor man. We shall end your begging suffering," and we were kicked out. So it was funny.
Good
Swedish.
timing, though, wasn't it, really? I mean, Tim could
Yeah.
have gone on for another 10, 15 minutes, I reckon.
That too, but I thought it was really good timing because we were at the end. There had been a natural pause, and we did begging the last 5 minutes of our 3 hour stint. And I'm thankful that it didn't happen like mid sentence of somebody saying, talking about. We were talking about the peace summit in Switzerland, and so I'm really happy that it happened when it happened. We all begged for money for the foundation. By the way, tweets in first. No. Yeah, the second post in the nest. That is the fundraiser, and
I'll
we
sort
will.
that out straight away, Jenny. I forgot I
No
did that.
worries. It's up there. Also, none of us co-hosts will ever beg you for money in your DMs. And if you were to send us a DM asking where do I donate, we will redirect you to the website MriyaReport.org. We will not send you a PayPal link. Just saying. So if you ever get a PayPal link, it's not us. It's somebody else trying to steal your money. And don't do that. Don't do it. Don't send the money. So that was my PSA. I came up to say that Swedish is so different depending on the region you live in, that if you pick a person from the north and a person from the very south, odds are not in favor of them understanding each other because it's so different. I have a harder time understanding people from the south, the very south, the Skåne, which is the region next to Denmark, than I have people in the north. But when you have somebody from like living in a very rural area in the north and they start speaking their own dialect, I am completely lost. That is how different it is. I understand them maybe every 5 words. And my thing that I did was when they started, I just looked around for the cues, and when everybody else was laughing, I'm like, okay, they told a joke. I better laugh too. And so I did. That was my strategy for surviving. Because for the most part, if people were drunk or tired, they revert back to their natural way of speaking. And no, didn't understand them. I just sat there going like, I feel like a foreigner in my own country. This is uncomfortable. Oh, anyway, so that was my story about Swedish. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. You know, it wasn't until I heard somebody here in the space for the first time actually explain about how difficult it is to sorry, coughing, how difficult it is when you're tired to do, you know, the change the language in your head to convert the one and the other. And they explained it exactly like that. And that's only really how I was able to put words to, because when that person explained how difficult it is to speak in another language when you're tired, I was like, oh my goodness, that's what it's like for me sometimes when I'm tired. And, you know, certain people I can't speak to late at night if I'm tired because they can't understand what I'm saying, basically.
I used to live in a street where there were loads of French people. It was either French women that had married English men or the other way around, I guess. And it was amazing to see all the kids being multilingual from such an early age. But one of the things that always fascinated me, some of them were really, really good at speaking English. And I used to say to them, do you actually dream in English, or do you dream back in your native language? And apparently, once they've learnt the language so well, depends where they are, but while they're in England and talking English all the time, a lot of them will actually dream in English. I would imagine that's the same for you, Jenny.
Yeah, it is. So I dream in both Swedish and English. I guess it depends on the dream, but I dream in both. And also, I think in both languages. Depending on what I'm doing, I think in English. And then if I'm doing something that is completely Sweden related, then I will think in Swedish. And so I actually use them both almost the same. The funniest thing is, so I studied German for 3.5 years, and I studied Spanish for an entire year. And the German I studied here in Sweden. And so when I'm thinking about German, it's always German, Swedish, Swedish, German. There's no English involved. But when I think of Spanish, it's English and Spanish. So if I were to say the phrase "Como se dice en español?" Por favor, then that means, how do I say this in Spanish, please? And then you say a word, that word would come out in English. And that happened to me. And I was sitting in Sweden, I was talking Spanish with one of my mom's colleagues who is from South America. And when I got to the word, I just looked at her and she's like, What? What word is it you're trying to say? And I'm like, I'm trying to come up with a Swedish word because my natural instinct is to go to the English one. And she just looked at me. She's like, Really? And I'm like, Yeah. Because by the time I studied Spanish, my English was so good that I never bothered translating from English to Swedish. And so there's no connection between Spanish and Swedish. There's only Spanish and English. It's really weird how the brain works.
That is quite amazing. Because I was about to say, I wonder how on earth Timothy Snyder copes, because apparently I think he can read and understand about 12 languages and is fluent in about 6 or 7 of them. So, yeah, how you switch from all of those, heaven only knows. I struggle with Northern English and Southern English. So, and I managed 6% in French. So they told me not to do my O level. So they made me do Spanish instead. And I managed to get a massive 19% in Spanish. And about a week before my exam, before the oral exam, my teacher said, Terry, please go away and learn some Spanish. Oh, dear, I regret now. I just had really rubbish teachers, I think. But there we go.
So I'm gonna just jump in. Yeah, that does a lot. Also, it depends on at what age you are when you learn your first second language. I started learning English when I was 9, and we got to watch TV shows. There was a special one that I guess Sweden paid the UK to put together, and whoever those poor child actors were, they must have thought that Swedish kids are really, really slow, because the way the lesson went was "Hello, Kita. How are you? That is how slow they said and like really articulated. And I get it. They were doing it for a 9-year-old, 9-year-old Swedish kid. But do you not understand like the shock when you like met English people and then you're like, why are you speaking so fast? I'm kidding, but kind of.
But
It was.
it's the classic way that all English people talk to foreigners. They think they have to shout it and say it slowly because they might not understand.
Well, the slow part I understand, and I've realized that I apparently am comfortable enough now to where. So in the engine, I'm working with this guy, and I told him if I speak too fast, you need to tell me because to me, I just speak my normal speed, and I'm not making it up. This is my normal speech pattern, and if that is too fast for you, you need to tell me. And he was like, "Yes, can you slow down?" And I'm like, "Sorry, yes, I will." So I don't even think about it that I speak quite fast actually. But I don't I used to do Swedish English translations in my head. And now the time when I do it is when I'm reading Swedish news articles because I only look pretty much at Swedish articles when I dig up information regarding Ukraine. And then I sit there with a Swedish article and I can read it pretty fluently until I come across one word and I'm like, I have no idea what this is. I don't know what the English equivalent is of this word. And then I'm stopped. And you hear the pause when I'm reading. It's really funny.
But I still think the fact that you can read something in one language and read it out in another language is pretty amazing. I just wish my brain could do all of that. But I said one of the ways that I managed to learn the phrase "Ruski vayeni karabel idi nachui," and I know I can get away with saying that because it's a lot of people. It's the Russian warship, and you all know the rest. But I slowed the video down to half speed so that I could pick up the syllables, and then I had to practice saying it slowly and gradually increase. A bit like learning to play the piano. You play something slowly, and then once your fingers know the movements, then you can suddenly go more quickly and you build up. And but now I can say that, and even more amazing, I can remember it too. So that was completely off the top of my head, which is amazing for me.
Well, that is what we had to do too. We had to repeat until it was, we knew what we were saying. And I wish we had gone on beyond pretty much tourist English after 6 years of studying it. Um, the reason why my English is a lot better than a lot of people that are in the same age as I am is because I chose to start reading books in English. I was reading the first book I read is called Where the Red Fern Grows. And it's kind of like Old Yeller, where there's a dog that gets rabies. And it's a really sad story. That was the first book. And then I moved on to Stephen King. And now, depending on who the author is, I will either read the book in English or Swedish. If it's a Nordic author, I will never bother with the English version because the translations will be worse. But if it's a French author, then to me it doesn't really matter. I think both translations would probably be equally bad. Maybe the English would be slightly better. I don't know. But that is why I have the vocabulary that I have, is because I read books in English. And they have done a better job with today's kids because when my son he was just turning 14, my oldest son, and so my youngest was 12 turning 13. They both listened to Harry Potter in English, and I thought they didn't understand a thing. but we had discussions regarding what had happened in the chapters. And so they actually understood. I was super amazed at the level of their English at that young age. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think the final thing that I will say before we move on to some more relevant Ukraine news is that my French teacher, we never even we got to sort of conversational, how are you, what's your name, etc. And we used to practice maybe being on the phone to each other in the class. But my French was so bad. The role that I got was the telephone because I was okay at making the ringing noise. I never got to join in the conversations because I hadn't got a clue what I was saying. But there we go. That's the limit of my French, and that's going back 55, 60 years almost. So I think French teachers might have improved a bit since then, at least some of them anyway. Anyway, Tracy, do we have any topics that we need to get on and cover?
Well, we've got the numbers and the regional news to cover, of course. Keep everybody up to date with what's going on in and around Ukraine. And then we can see where we go from there, I guess. There's still lots of information coming out, I guess, since the Peace Summit and various different comments and things like that. We can go over the frontline situation a little bit if you would like, and anything else that anybody else would like to talk about, really. So if you've got a topic, now's the time to come and bring it up related to Ukraine, of course. Or, like I said, you can DM us in the background and we would be happy to read that out. But we like it when you come and speak to us. You know, Terry Fella and I, Jenny, we can yak away all day long quite happily, but it enriches the conversation when you all come and join in. And of course, it takes it in different directions as well, often things that we don't think about. Very often in the SBU segment, when people ask questions, Terry Fella, that sends me off in a direction of what to hunt for and where to go next sometimes. So that can be quite interesting because sometimes it makes me go look for things that I maybe wouldn't have considered looking for, or I may not have needed to know that information because that question hadn't come up, for example. So it definitely enriches the conversation and the value of what we do here. Unfortunately, I do have to tell you that Russian troops have damaged power lines in an attack in Poltava. 53,000 households have been cut off. 2.4 thousand. No, that can't be right. It's because it's 53,000 households, so they can't say how many people that can be. Emergency crews are already working there. I'm just waiting for updates. It's just really happened not too long ago. The number of victims at the moment is 12. 2 of those are children, and 3 people have been hospitalised. So that's all the detail that I'm getting at the moment, and that's direct from the military administration there. They're saying that there may be people under the rubble of the building. Of course, emergency services are on scene, and they are, of course, trying to continue to rescue people. No information about the condition of the people that have been sent to hospital, but of course, Russia just being Russia. So, anybody got any hands up? Anybody want to raise a topic before we continue on? Arya, welcome. Hello.
Good morning, Tracy, Terry, Will, Jenny, everybody listening. Two things I wanted to really quickly bring up. Just bits of news. I apologize if they've already been discussed. Had a headache yesterday, so went to bed really early and did very little news reading. Save in the morning. But I saw this morning before I started working that Lukashenko has made several more anti-Semitic statements accusing Jews of being thieves and it being biological in our nature again. It's not the first time he's done this. And then I've seen a huge uptick of RT videos recycling KGB anti-Semitic propaganda about Jews. And now they're starting to regularly push this story from this conspiracy theorist who happens to be Israeli, that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent and the Israeli government, abducted all the children, and it was all done to blackmail the world leaders because the Zionists control the world. And they keep playing this. So they have increased those types of videos greatly. I looked at their schedule. I was using Translate, so it is limited, but it does appear they are rerunning the program over and over again on a daily basis for the Russian speakers. And then when I was popping on Twitter, I saw a funny thing, which it seems to be new news, but I apologize if it is an old story and it just got too far back down the memory hole. The Kazan, the Russian nuclear submarine, their newer one, right, that they've been showing off for a while, went out on its maiden voyage. And somebody took some pictures of it. And, it's possible they're photoshopped, but it does appear that they are missing several of their panels, that they have fallen off. So might be another Kuznetsov class aircraft carrier type situation. These things might not be built as well as they were letting on. If they're sending it out on its maiden voyage, and already it's lost plating. You would think at least somebody would put something over it to make it look real, at least for the pictures. But it's very surprising. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Arya. I don't know in terms of the nuclear sub saber rattling nonsense. I've not heard that talked about for a little bit, actually. The last time I heard it spoken about was when they'd basically been met. The fleet had been met before that sub arrived by ships from Canada and the US. I have seen that Jens Stoltenberg has been talking. He's been saying about, just in terms of a nuclear force, that we should be showing force because that indicted child snatcher is talking, all his saber rattling about moving nukes about and various different things and nuclear submarines, etc. So I don't know how serious he is about that. I can find the comment actually. What he said, it's kind of related. It's not exactly what you're talking about, but it's sort of all on the same topic, isn't it? What was the other thing that you asked about? Sorry. Arya, what was the second thing that you asked about? Can you remember?
I'm sorry, Tracy. I was trying to send you a picture of the nuclear submarine. Oh, just if you had seen anything in particular as to the pictures. I've seen now 3 different angles of pictures, so it does appear to be real and not just one photoshopped of the Kazan class submarine in Cuba. And apparently it's a stealth submarine supposedly, and it's got very expensive paneling to help in that. And several of the panels and multiple pictures are missing, panels that were there when it left to go. So it makes me really wonder as to the quality of this submarine class, right? They were very much talked up by the Russians, and if they can't even make a non-stealth voyage without pieces falling off, right, imagine it actually having to function significantly underwater with all that pressure and such. It really makes me wonder. Back to you.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And I've said this about just their nuclear force in general, when they make all these saber rattling, which we don't take seriously anyway, because, it's not as we know. But I just think, I always say, look at everything else that's falling apart. Look at everything else that's being a paper tiger. I don't believe for 1 minute that they have been able to, without corruption, keep up to the maintenance of those things, because it's very expensive to look after nuclear weapons for a start. And you have to go through, strict maintenance. You have to do all that and keep up to that. And I can't see that the Russians doing that, just for the young examples that we've actually seen. And then on top of that, like I said, the corruption for one. You can't tell me that that's the only industry in Russia that corruption doesn't touch and doesn't affect and doesn't, make like all the rest of the systems that are completely corrupt. But anyway, Joanna's joined us, and she will probably know more than I do on this topic, Arya. So we'll go across to Joanna, if that's okay. Go ahead, Joanna.
Yeah, I can't hear you, Joanna.
I can. Either you're going to have to recycle. Apologies about that. Thank you for coming up, Joanna. Please come back and we will go straight to you. Let's go to IT fella in the meantime.
Hi, yeah, on the sub, I was just thinking it may be that they brought it around to Florida because they need to get to a Walmart to get some duct tape. And they may be using the missing panels for roofing on a dasha somewhere in Russia.
That's pretty funny.
Duct tape and 3-in-1 oil. I think that, or WD-40 or whatever it is. That's all anybody needs, is what I've heard.
Joanna, can you speak now? Welcome back.
Still not getting a lot from you, Joanna.
Goodness me.
Do you want to try again? It's a bit jinxed, isn't it, today, our Twitter space? But let's see if Joanna will try again. Or maybe she's got to fall down into the stalls and try and raise herself up again. We'll give you the step ladder this time.
Okay, whilst we wait for Joanna to battle the gremlins around here in this app, let's go to Shatsi. Welcome, Shatsi.
Hi, thank you. Quick question. I just saw information that those Russians that were trapped around the Vovochansk area, that they have surrendered. Is that true? And Empress Jenny, could you pronounce the name of the Swedish city that is spelled Vaxjo? Thank you.
Empress Jenny, where did this come from? Oh, she's dropped back down.
Oh, I see Jenny as a ghost, actually, possibly. She's still a speaker for me with the mic going. And I am trying to bring Joanna up as a speaker again. I'm not sure if it's working.
Empress Jenny from the North Sea Empire. Go ahead, Arya.
I just want to test it and see if I'm also having the issue, as long as there's no hands.
No, you're loud and clear.
Jenny, sorry, or Ayana, wish I could trade with you. I've said my bit. Twitter pox. Sorry.
Twitterpox indeed. So in terms of those surrenders, Shatsi, yes, they were surrendering, some of them. As far as I'm aware, it was in small groups to start with. I think 20-something, 26 or 24, I think, the first group. So I haven't seen any updates as of today yet, but I will keep an eye out for that. Will may know, he's on the panel. But I just think even for small group surrenders like that, that's a really good sign, because what that will signify to the others is that it's safe safe to surrender, because what the others will be listening out for, no doubt, is screams, you know, shots, that type of thing, because that's what Russian forces do to people when they surrender. So they would, of course, expect something like that. And when they don't hear anything like that, I think over time, when they start to run out of things, that's going to be in their mind, and hopefully that's going to plant a seed that they can at least consider the possibility that those people have been able to surrender safely. Of course, they don't know fully, but hopefully that will at least allay a little bit of the fears. Because let's face it, Russians would just probably shoot them as soon as they came out. And that's what we've seen when Russians, in the videos that they've shared on social media, those when they have shot Ukrainians, when they've gotten them out of trenches, for example, in Bakhmut, when they've found them in Avdiivka, when they've been injured and not been able to be evacuated on time. We've seen it many times, right from that very first video that we saw, where that prisoner of war, the Ukrainian prisoner of war, was shot at point blank range by the Russians. So I think hopefully that answers your question a little bit for now, Shatsi, and I will look for more information. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
I've also heard that there have been several who were had died, but also quite a few that were injured that have also been rescued, as it were. So taken into as prisoners of war, but obviously carried out and looked after. But I think, like Tracy, the last I fully heard was it was about 24, 25. But there are quite a lot more. I believe that they're in some aggregate plant within the Vovchansk area, and the Ukrainians have managed to cut them off from any further supplies or being able to retreat. So whether they're actually able to get in to find the rest of them, we don't know. But as Tracy says, we will keep you updated if there is more information. And Shatsi, if we get Yenny up again at some stage, you'll have to give us the letters of that Swedish town, city that you wanted us to know to understand how to say. Joanna, do you want to go ahead, see if we can actually hear you this time?
Okay, let's try again. Now it works?
That's brilliant. Can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know. I have a new phone and it's supposed to be a good phone, but since I have it, I have all sorts of problem. I don't know if it's the phone or the Twitter, but anyway, X app, whatever.
Twitter pox, as Arye says.
Probably, yes. I just wanted to comment, on the Russian submarine in Cuba. Apparently, it's a new submarine. It was first launched in 2018, so like 5, 6 years old. It is supposed to be good. Apparently, the US was kind of worried about it, but I believe it's shedding a little bit right now there in Cuba. I'm wondering if if he did like the salmons, went upstream to die somewhere. I don't know. And it's funny that immediately after the big Russian fleet of 4 ships, one of which was a tug, I guess they are kind of self-conscious and they realize that they have to bring the tag. Um, we don't know what will be happening. Immediately afterwards, U.S. submarine went to visit Cuba, and the Canadian frigate, which was parked, let's say, near the Russian frigate at the same berth or something like this. So it's nice to see that everybody is there in Cuba. And also about nuclear trolling, have you seen Macron to the G7 meeting, summit, whatever? He brought the nuclear suitcase.
Yes, I did see that. That was very subtle nod of him. Anyway, Arye, go ahead. I see you've got your hand up again.
So I apologize if there's slight noise distortion. I'm walking the dog. Ayana, that was hilarious, the salmon anthology. I hope you're right on that. Just in regards to the 24 prisoners that were taken in that one little area, right? It's one thing when a couple of people are taken. It can be the last couple of guys in the unit. They can be shell shocked. It could have been a couple of buddies that agree to get out and give up. There's a bunch of different options. When it's that many guys, it's a lot harder to muster up the courage to go around asking people, hey, do we give up? Right? That's the type of thing a lot of Russians have been shot over. A lot of Russians have been thrown in military prisons for, and their military prisons, as we've seen videos, tend to be a hole in the ground or a cellar somewhere, right? They don't actually get sent back to Russia to a proper military prison. So to muster up the courage, right, and I imagine it was more than 24 guys ready to surrender when they were storming the area, people died, right? Even if you're not shooting back, properly, there's a decent chance a couple of the people were killed. So for that many people to be willing to get together in the type of military the Russians have and make that decision, I do think it's indicative of morale. Back to you.
Very good point, IA. I think, as you say, for them even to start asking each other, what do you reckon? But as I say, from what I hear, they did end up being completely surrounded. There was no way that they could get back. There was no further supplies that could come in towards them. So perhaps they'd all run out of ammo. And I guess a mass suicide might not have been a favourable option either. They've done the best thing, and I think, as Tracy says, the fact that and as you say, the fact that a group of them have done, hopefully there will have been I don't know, FPVs in the air on the Russian side, and they'd have been able to see that these guys were being taken alive and not just pulled out and shot. I think that might work well. If morale is low generally, which I think we can agree it might be, then hopefully there will be a little bit more of this happening in the future. Aya, go ahead.
Well said. I just wanted to say, something I have seen, which has really surprised me, is the amount of Russian servicemen that have been injured, that have then committed suicide, right? People on motorbikes, people left alone in a trench rather than surrendering. And I don't think that that's necessarily, right, like a sense of loyalty, right? It's not like in ancient Rome, somebody falling on their gladius because they didn't want to dishonor their family. I think it's a matter that a lot of people are still believing the propaganda about Ukrainians, right? And then especially if you're a Mobic and you're going there and you get thrown right into the brutality of modern combat and reality, it's very easy then for all of those assumptions you have to be verified, right? Because they're firing at you. And you tend to really hate the people that are firing at you and killing your buddies. So, it really, really is very astonishing to see this again starting to crop up after it seemed to have been stamped out by the Russians. Back to you.
I think the other thing is that, sorry, nearly muted myself, or maybe I did mute myself. The other thing is that it is all many of the Russians will have known. It will be what is almost expected. It will have been drummed into them. And as you say, the treatment that they get, even amongst their own kind, they misbehave or get caught drinking too much alcohol, they're chucked in a pit, they're threatened and tortured and teased in not very pleasant ways. Rather a lot of the time. So it's probably exactly what they would have expected. And maybe the fact that they possibly think there's strength in numbers, that, well, maybe there's enough of us that the Ukrainians wouldn't dare to kill all of us all at once. But we might never know. But at least, you know, if they have surrendered, it's a better thing that they've done for themselves. Go ahead, Arye, and then we will come back to you as well, Shartsy.
Just on one final note, and thank you for your patience, Shartsy. Um, you know, one of the things that really has blown my mind, especially the fact that they've let the videos go out, right? It's not like they're leaked videos. Is there have been multiple videos of Russian commanders literally lining their troops up, both special forces and Mobex, and being like, "You're all going to die in this assault, or most of you are going to die in this assault, but you're going to be heroes, and you know it's for the motherland and all of this." And the people go because even if ideologically they don't agree, they know they've been threatened. They know if they don't go, they're going to get shot by their comrades. Or some form of blocking unit, which has been verified as being regularly used. So, you know, it really is amazing. Back to you.
Thanks, Arye. Very good points, actually. Anyway, over to you, Shartsy. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you. Is there any information that seeps through to the Russian soldiers that they're not going to get shot and tortured? Are they so 100% insulated from that they don't know? And I don't know. I've tried reading books and whatnot, and I just can't understand. I used to read the World War II history books. And okay, there I kind of justified it as the Russians went through a lot of brutality and they're getting back at the Germans. Not that that's acceptable, but it was a justification for back then. And then I find out, no, they're just the Mongol horde. This is who they are. And I do not understand the brutality against each other and against their enemies. Now I know where that term civilized West comes from, but I'm just wondering if they get any feedback or find any information that they're not going to be tortured.
I do believe that there is a website, and I'm sure that the Ukrainians have been sending out flyers or putting information on Telegram or various different ways. And I can't remember what it's called, but I can see that Robin has come up, and she might be wanting to say something because she came up specifically. So I'll let Robin go first, and then we'll go to Arye and then Joanna. Robin.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the program is called I Want to Live, however you say that in Russian. I don't speak Russian and I have no interest in knowing. But it is, this has been going on since the early days of the full-scale invasion. There's a hotline, a telephone hotline, staffed 24 hours a day by military psychologists, people who know how to deal with this kind of thing. And they've gotten thousands and thousands, it might even be up to 1 million phone calls from Russian soldiers and from family members about to give instructions on how to safely surrender and that kind of thing. And they do, as far as I know, but I've seen some clips of them dropping notes from drones saying, you know, if you want to live, if you want to surrender, follow this drone and we'll bring you to safety. So I think a lot of people are still taken in by the propaganda because there's so much of it, but there is other information available for people who want to take advantage of it. And I think as things get worse and worse on the Russian side, there is going to be more of a willingness to look elsewhere and to maybe not swallow the propaganda wholesale. But as I said, there's a very active program that you can call 24 hours a day, Russian-speaking military psychologists who will walk people through the process, and it's been quite successful, as I understand it. Thanks, Slava Ukraini.
Slava. Thanks very much for that, Robin. So it's called I Want to Live, as you say, in Russian. And I suspect, though, that commanders and various people might well have seen those leaflets or that information, and they've still managed to try and convince their own soldiers that it is all propaganda, and the moment that you get caught, they'll just torture you and do worse things than ever. And as Arye says, it is quite horrific seeing some of these guys willingly just shoot themselves or pull the pin out of a hand grenade and put it underneath them. Absolutely appalling, really, that they would rather do that than surrender. And at that point, let's go back to Arye.
So you're both 100% correct, and Robin, very well said. I just wanted to add, leave it. Oh, you just licked something I'm allergic to. This is going to be fun. Sorry. In regards to, with the Russian troops and propaganda, right? It's up to the individual and the family. So, if somebody is on the internet and they're looking around for stuff, they'll find it. If you're a 45-year-old, guy from some second-rate or third-rate city who's been called up, chances are, unless you have some younger cousin or a son or something who's telling you this information, you're not going to find it, right? And then there was a very good point Robin brought up, which is the issue of counter propaganda for this. So, it's one thing to see leaflets. It's another thing to believe the leaflets you are seeing, right? There is a constant stream of information from the Russians, trying to counter this, right? It's all propaganda. They're Nazis. You're going to be put into a work camp. You're going to be shot. They're just trying to make you give up, so on and so forth. And then there's the factor of actually being in a war, right? And again, I have not been in combat. I have no formal military experience, but something I have seen that it seems to be uniform in every war almost since history began is most people fight that war for the guy standing next to them, for their friends, their neighbors, and those people, right? That's why they fight. That's why people will stand rather than, fleeing or, so in regards to that, right, the combat in many of these areas is very intense, and the Ukrainians give them hell. And it's very easy with that for it to reinforce the propaganda narratives, right? On the one hand, you can know they probably will keep me alive. On the other hand, you have all the little pieces of propaganda, the little things that have been said that are nagging you on the back of the head. So I think it really depends a lot on the person, right? So again, if you were a Mobic that was called up and you're 25, 30 years old and you were living in the city and you were somebody who was regularly on the internet and playing video games and on English language forums and stuff and watching YouTube and stuff, there's a decent chance you're aware you can, surrender, assuming you can get into a position where they're not going to shoot you because they're thinking you're attacking. Right. On the other hand, you're an older person, you're less technologically savvy, you don't have family who's looking into this, who feels open enough to talk to you. You don't have access to your cell phone anymore. Any of these things, right? It really does impact it. And then there's just the final aspect, which is even if you know you can surrender, there's a matter of surviving and getting over to the other side without either them shooting you or your own side shooting you, right? And that's why we've seen those crazy videos of, there's 2 or 3 of them, of drones dropping water bottles and notes telling people, this is how you get past the minefield. Go this way. If you go this way, they'll target you with artillery fire. And we've seen 5-10 minute long videos of these crazy, escape routes that these people are taking because they literally have drones telling them where to go. So there's a lot of factors. So even I think if on the one hand you do want to surrender, there's so many things keeping you from doing so It's very hard. So when you have 24 guys, even if they're out of ammo and out of water, that are willing to do that, I do think that that is a big indication. Now, whether it's an indication of just that little area, their unit, or the larger Russian army, I don't know. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Aye. It is a really appalling situation to find themselves in, I must imagine. Anyway, we'll go to Robin and then to Yenny. Robin.
Yeah, thank you. I just two observations. One is one of the things that you see with the Ukrainians using drones to rescue Russian soldiers who've decided to surrender is how much Ukrainians value every single life, even life of people who up until that point have been their enemies. The other thing is, why did the Russian soldiers believe all this propaganda? Because they're being told that the Ukrainians are doing exactly what the Russians are doing to Ukrainian POWs. So they know it's possible because they've been doing it themselves. I mean, one of the things that the Ukrainian government has kept rather quiet, the number of Ukrainian POWs who've been castrated by these bastards. And, they're trying to keep it a little bit quiet out of, concern for the soldiers involved. But I've seen more than one accounting of a Russian who is surrendering, whose first question is, am I going to be castrated? Well, yeah, that's why they're worried about that, because that's exactly what they've been doing to Ukrainian POWs. So, just for whatever that's worth. It's again showing us there's one side is good and one side is evil, and it's pretty easy to tell which is which. Slava Ukraini.
Heroin Slava. On that note, Robin, you're absolutely right. I've seen reports of that, exactly that, and them saying that the number is staggeringly high. Just showing, as we've said with all the other things that they do, that it's systematic throughout. It's not just one or two here and there. And they mentioned, those official reports mentioned exactly that they are keeping the number quiet out of respect for the people that have already had to go through that, all that. I don't even know what to call it. It's just such a despicable thing that they've done. So yeah, if you can, if you know the amount of war crimes that we talk about and the numbers that we talk about in terms of war crimes, and in a sexual nature as well, then you can really imagine how many cases there are of that. So just think about that if you want to understand how high the numbers are. And then I think we don't really need to know specifics, do we? Because it's kind of clear from that. So just know that there's no difference when it comes to doing things like castrating them. This is what the Russians do systematically. So basically anybody that they get hold of is at risk of that. Sorry, I just wanted to add that to what you were saying, Robin. Who was next, Terry fella?
I think it's Yenny, and then we'll go back to IA again.
So another reason too why they would rather die is if they're being taken as POWs, there's no guarantee that they can ever go back safely to Russia, because during World War I and World War II, if you were taken prisoner as a POW or you went missing, you were labeled traitor of the state. And so I don't imagine that they treat people they consider to be traitors very kindly if they ever go back. And in most countries, treason is a capital punishment in a lot of countries around the world. I don't think that Russia is any different. I imagine, considering that they kill them if they turn back and they say that's treason. If they don't want to go to the front, then you can be shot. So and they're just despicable people. I know that this was something that they did during World War I and World War II. I haven't seen any reports of this in their war here in Ukraine, but I don't think that they have changed that ideology, because they don't seem to have changed much of the other stuff, the despicable stuff that they did back in World War II. So why would this have changed? And then they would get the death penalty by the time they get back home to Russia. So it's better to die than to be taken as a POW and considered a traitor. Thank you.
And actually, I think, Jenny, that's fairly obvious when you see some of the prisoner swaps and you see the Ukrainians getting off their buses and the coaches looking so happy and relieved. And then you see pictures of some of the Russian prisoners of war that have been released, and they are all, nearly always, looking quite fearful of what lies ahead for them. And I have heard that quite a few of the prisoners of war do not want to be released back again. And as you say, the fact that if they do end up going back, they don't actually know. And I guess we don't really know either exactly what their fate is. Anyway, back to Aye, and then I see Robin's got a hand up again. So Aye first.
So just in regards to what Robin had previously said, or it might have been Terry Fellow, I apologize. Couple of things at the moment. When in the last several years of World War II, from about 1943 onwards, you started hearing rumors within the Reich that there had been crimes done in the East, horrible crimes. These rumors got more and more prevalent. In 44 and 45, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of reports, both official and anecdotal, of people talking about this type of stuff, right? And I don't mean just generals or majors and stuff. There were a lot of letters that were sent back. Most of them were seized, but some of them got through. Every army censored the letters. The point is when the Russians and other Soviet, allies that were under them, because at that stage I will call them allies. Stalin hadn't completely, shown every color, at least to the world. And in any case, when they started moving into actual German territory, right, being areas that had been directly annexed into the Reich, or areas like Cronenberg, the people knew what had happened, right? They didn't know there were death camps and millions of people killed, but they knew that there were civilians massacred. They knew there were villages destroyed and terrible crimes had happened, right? They knew it was a war of survival and a war of extermination. And then when it said, the Russians did what the Russians tend to do, or had at least tend to have done for centuries as a aspect of warfare, which is mass rape, looting, and other forms of terror on the civilian population. The Germans were able to recapture a couple of villages, right? Because in wars, even when you're losing, you tend to be able to have a localized force be able to take back a little bit of land for a bit if you put enough forces there. And they, started taking video of all the dead and raped German women, children, and elderly. And that majorly drummed up the population, knowing what had happened. But the Russians know, right? It's all over Russian media channels. The soldiers talk. They're not idiots. Many of them are low information, and there are a lot of people that are low IQ, as in any army. But they're not idiots, right? People talk. This gets around, and they know what they've done. They know what they've been told to do if they catch a Ukrainian, right? Soldier. So they know the same thing, or they at least expect that the same thing is going to be done to them. Because if we do something to somebody, why wouldn't they do it to us? The idea that they're more civilized than you, and holding to a higher standard is very hard to take in when you're on the receiving end of bullets, even if you're the aggressor. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Aye. Go ahead, Robin.
Thanks. Yeah, just one other thing I'd forgotten to mention about that We Want to Live program. The Ukrainians are not releasing the names of anyone who surrenders to them. Everyone is being listed as captured by the Ukrainian military. This is in part so that people, if they do choose to go back to Russia afterwards, are able to. So it's just another example of how well designed this program is. As I said, no, there is no record of anyone having surrendered voluntarily. Anyway, that's all. Slava opinion.
Aaron Slava, thank you for that. That's a very good bit of extra information to know. Anyway, Shasi, go ahead.
Thank you. I just read a book recently. The name of it was Promise Me You'll Shoot Yourself. And it's about the city of Deming in Germany after World War II. I mean, once they lost the city. Whoa, it's an emotional book, let me tell you. But anyhow, can I ask Jenny now?
Yes, do. Go ahead while she's up here again.
Okay, Jenny, how do you pronounce the Swedish city that is spelled Vaxjo? Thanks.
Växjö. It's very hard for foreigners, but it's pronounced Växjö.
Thank you. That we were in that city and I was calling my family that is Swedish and they wanted to know where I was and I said Vaxjo. They said Växjö. And I'm like, okay, you're Swedish, you know how to pronounce it, but oh, that's above my head. Thank you.
So, funny story, we have shires. I think that is the English translation. And an American told me that we had Chinese cities because the way you pronounce it, you're not Swedish, it would be Koping. So we have a lot of Köpingar, which are kind of like shires. So Linköping, yeah, that does sound Chinese, but I would pronounce it Linköping, but that's besides the point. But when I heard about these cities for the first time as described as Chinese, it looked like a question mark, and I was trying to figure out which Chinese cities we had in Sweden. And I was helped by a friend of mine who was American. He's like, "You got loads of them, especially in the South. There are all these copings," and I'm like, "Oh gosh, never mind." Anyways, but regarding the only reason why I know that Russia treats everyone whose body hasn't been recovered. So if you just go missing because uh, especially in Ukraine where they don't even want the bodies back. Um, but in World War II, I was reading somewhere on like a history thing. So they treated all POWs and people who went missing during battle as traitors of the state. Uh, it was an act of treason to end up being missing in a war. I haven't figured that one out, or being taken as a POW. I guess they just assume that everybody talks about like the operations and discuss military secrets if they're being taken captured, that they are being tortured and do a tell-all. And again, that is quite telling on what they do to their prisoners of war. If that is the assumption on the Russian soldiers, that we will be tortured, we will be told to tell all everything operational in our military, because that is what we would do in order to get the upper hand. And so they go home if they're POWs and work them like they treasons. Kind of sad. And I also know that in World War II, the Germans, when they realized the Russians were coming, they were trying to flee into the part of Germany that was the French, British, and American zones, and nobody wanted to really stay in East Germany because they knew how cruel the Russians were. So for that reason alone, we should give all the weapons we have to Ukraine so they can kick the Russians out, because they've been at this for forever, being cruel to the people that they fight with and don't adhere to rules of engagement. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. That's it is, as you say, it's what they seem to have always been like, and it's how they know that they treat their own prisoners of war, and so why wouldn't everybody else treat them like that? So, as you say, classing them all as traitors. And the other thing is, they don't particularly want the dead bodies back either, because then they would have to pay compensation. And so I do remember, you don't hear much of it anymore, but those mobile crematoriums that I think we thought were for getting rid of just Ukrainians, but I think they also used it to get rid of their own kind as well. It's, I think for a lot of us, it's just so much for us to get our head around completely. Anyway, Aye, back to you again.
So just to add some information on World War I and World War II with the Russians. In the First World War, right, if an army surrendered, if the general surrendered, the units were returned, which there were returns when Russia went into civil war mode by different governments. It really depended, right? So if you sided with the whites and you were returned, to their side, you would be allowed to live, and they'd hand you a gun, and you'd get back in uniform and you'd go fight. If you were handed to the communists or any of the other political factions, they'd execute you, and vice versa. If you had, prescribed communist sympathies and you were returned with an exchange. During World War II, there was a no step back order, right? That was there, and they did not repatriate their captured in the same way. Most of them that were taken back were either executed or thrown into work camps for a number of years or till they died. There were individual exceptions made for certain officers, certain political people that were in various civil administrations, a couple of generals that had fought heroically to the end and been wounded. There were exceptions, right? Stalin had one of his son, Yukashvili, had been captured by the Germans, I believe in 42 or 43. Originally, he had planned on just abandoning him and didn't care. And then towards the end, he had a change of heart and then found out he had been executed, right? And it really pissed him off because he wanted to bring him back. The level of barbarity that the Russians believe they are fighting this war with, right, and that they believe the Ukrainians are fighting this war with, it's not the same level of caliber, but it is getting there, right, in terms of feeling of people. One other thing that I think is worth bringing up, which is interesting, and I don't know if any other countries have this strategy, but in the IDF, if you are captured, right, they actually tell you to just tell them everything. You're not supposed to try to hide information because they know that they're going to torture you, so that you should just say whatever you're going to say, and they're going to have to change the plans either way. So they might as well just have you spill the beans and change the plans. That way there's less of a chance of them killing you or hurting you. So I do wonder if that's done in any other militaries. I've never heard that done. I mean, I imagine on certain missions, right, if somebody's captured, they're told, right, don't fight it, but I don't know. It's just something interesting that I thought was worth bringing up in regards to this. But I do think the Russians feel that they are going to get tortured and horrible things are going to happen, or at least a lot of them do. And the Ukrainians know that's going to happen to them if they get captured, right? It's not a matter of them thinking it. They're the vast majority of POWs, as Tracy and Terry have said very well, have been heavily abused. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Aye. Yeah, it is quite horrific and very interesting to know what the IDF do. And I do remember from World War II, name, rank, and serial number. was all they were meant to give. And I guess it then became up to the individual to decide how much they could put up with. Anyway, a couple more hands going up. So we'll go to Yanis and then we'll go to Pickled Flicker Fella. Yanis.
Yeah, good day to everyone. So just a short comment on this Russian signature. Are they doing the war? So there is no reason to look back to First, Second World War. You can just try to look up what they did during First Chechen War. Yeah, and it's terrible.
Sorry
the
to
same-
interrupt you, Yanis.
Yeah.
I can hear an awful lot of background noise. Can you find somewhere a little quieter and then come back to us again? Couldn't quite make out what you were saying because of the background noise. It sounded a bit like car traffic or something. So see if you can find somewhere quieter and then come back to us. So in the meantime, we'll go to Pickled Flicker Fella.
Hey, thank you very much. Hi, Terry. Hi, Tracy. Thank you for hosting this space. And I was not able to listen this conversation from the beginning, but I did listen to some of the points Jenny was making in Aria. You know, I figured I wanted to chime in maybe and share some of my perspective. You know, one, I honestly would be careful about making any types of, connections with previous wars, right? I mean, when we look at World War I, World War II, there's, very different, very different mindset, right? Modern war is very different as well. And before I project that point even further, right? But what I think we need to really realize is that it's not necessarily both sides, right? It's just one-sided thing. Ukrainian soldiers know that they were probably going to be tortured because of the videos of Russian torturing Ukrainians. And the Russian soldiers are probably thinking they're going to be tortured because, again, of the videos of Russian soldiers torturing Ukrainians, right? That's all it really boils down to. And I think I've also seen some of the reports to where the Russian command, right, field command, whatever, operational command, once they get new recruits, they would show them those videos of them torturing Ukrainians and say, look, Ukrainians know this is what, this is what we did, and they're going to do the same thing to you, because we did that to them. But there's very little evidence that Ukrainians done that to the Russians, right? And in fact, one of the benefits the modern battlefield really is demonstrating to us, apologize for some background noise, is introduction of those cameras. Almost every other soldier is wearing that stuff, right? And we see so many recorded operations on Ukrainian side of the assaults onto Russian positions where they're really going doing everything they can, the Ukrainians, to give Russians the chance to surrender, right? Because they don't really necessarily want to get into kinetic fight with somebody that's cornered, right? So they always give them a way out, especially when they, kind of approaching certain dugouts and they know that they are surrendered before they would frag anything. They would basically give the Russians a chance to, to save life. And, not to mention the government-sponsored program that Ukrainians have been, kind of implementing. I think it's called I Want to Live. That gives Russians the information about how to properly surrender, essentially, or avoid mobilization at any cost anyway. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of highlight those two things. But as far as torturing for information, I don't think it's really accurate, especially in today's modern battlefield, because dynamics on the battlefield change so much. And getting some kind of actionable information from somebody that you just captured by means of torture is just not, it's not efficient, effective, if you take aside the moral, set of problems that this presents, because things change, right? And a lot of times those soldiers that do surrender, they don't know any better. They would just, especially on the Russian side, right? Typically, it's like they would be given a rifle and given orders to go in that general direction and then clear out any resistance that Ukrainians might put up, right? So they really don't know much. There is, in the military mindset, there is this, it's called, I think is, there's different terms for it, but one of them is tactical questioning or whatever, right? When you do capture, you do want to ask some questions, right? But typically, it's not something that's going to lead to some kind of breakthrough, right? As we've seen maybe in some of the previous conflicts, when information, the passage of orders was a lot slow, right? The dynamic on the battlefield was a lot slow, so you could get a better picture if you would have to question a bunch of captured enemy soldiers. So anyway, I just wanted to say that stuff. But yeah, I think the important element here is that we really need to remember the reason Russians think that they're going to be tortured is because they know what they do to Ukrainian soldiers and they expect that type of return. But Ukrainians actually do a very opposite thing. And I'm going to be honest with you, after watching a lot of those videos, I mean, hats off for them to be better, right? Because I mean, they really trying to preserve humanity, right, in their individuals, because they don't want to be, on the same level, I guess, as the Russians are. But yeah, having said that, I did see some interviews of Russian soldiers, basically, even those that were not captured, right? But they kind of still in the battlefield, claiming that they have grenades tied off to them because if they get incapacitated to where they cannot move, exfiltrate, or be at the threat of capture, that they supposedly will, detonate. And there's some videos showing that, right, to where they basically use either grenades or other means of, aviation to where they basically depart themselves. Um, you know, and the reason I'm laughing, it's tragic, but the reason I'm laughing because it's, they just convince themselves that that's what they need to do, right? I mean, that really speaks to the effectiveness of Russian propaganda on their own citizens, right? So anyway, I know this is the subject that we can talk for hours. I apologize for rumbling on for so long, but really appreciate. Thank you for the opportunity to be in the speaker panel. Really interesting conversation. I will continue to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Pickle Ficlavella. Stay there for a moment because I've got another question for you. Would you say that we know that the Ukrainians do get abused in various different ways when they get taken captive? Is that for questioning or just for the sake of it? Just a quickie answer.
Yeah, no, great point, Terry. This is actually, I meant to say that, right? And I don't think I drove that point across hard enough. I believe it's just for the sake of it, right? Because again, this is a genocidal war. When you see, some of the Russian troops at the front line, the way they act, the level of violence and just generally inhumane treatment of anyone that is not them. I mean, they do that to each other, even, right? I mean, there's all kinds of documented acts of sexual torture in amongst their ranks, right? So they treat themselves just as bad. But when they see Ukrainian, right, when they capture Ukrainian, that's even worse. And again, the reason I brought up the dynamics of the battlefield is that I mean, they know there's nothing Ukrainian soldiers, even if Ukrainian soldier does know what, and does tell them whatever information, the things have already changed 10 times, but by the time they would be able to extract any information. So it has literally zero practical point rather than instill fear. And that's the reason they record those things. It's a reason they share those things because it's part of the psychological warfare, right? And it's part of the way to demoralize Ukrainians, right? Because Russians think that by showing those things, right, Ukrainians gonna get scared and they're gonna stop resisting because that's what Russians would do, right? They're just driven by fear. On the other hand, what Ukrainian society has shown us is it's completely opposite, right? This even further galvanizes the resolve, and it really opens up the eyes to many Ukrainians maybe about how that they need to provide a greater level of resistance support, but for God's sake, this is the type of reaction we need to have in the West, right? When we see those things, those are not, those are Russian individuals taking actions to whatever violence, right, on defenseless individuals and defenseless humans by, mutilating them, whatever, right, torturing them and all that stuff. But that's part of their society. This is the kind of stuff that they will do to anyone they are at war with. And in their mind, they are at war with the West. They are at war with NATO because they will never accept the fact that they've been humiliated with this 3-day operations that last already so many years because of sheer Ukrainian resistance, right? In their mind, Ukrainians are lesser people. They are not capable of doing this type of defense. The only reason the Russians were not able to achieve, well, two reasons the Russians were not able to achieve this great success yet. One, because supposedly right? They're taking it easy and they're getting ready to begin at any day now, which is laughable. And two, equally laughable, that they are fighting the whole of NATO bloc, right, in Ukraine. But by any means, it cannot be attributed to Ukrainian success, right? Because for them, that's just, impossible. But that's the type of mentality they have, and this is, especially those soldiers in the front lines, and especially in the early days of the full-scale invasion, when a lot of them were still alive. They joined the ranks because of the ideological reasons, right? That type of evolved. And when I say ideological reasons, I mean those that are driven by kind of fascist and Nazi ideology that kind of plays in tune with Russian imperialism, right? But we see then change because a lot of those people already departed this world, right? But that's why Russia had to kind of implement draft and incentivize it with money and all that stuff. So now we see degradation of Russian society, but their motivations are different. They're willing to go to Ukraine, join Russian military as long as they're getting paid, which, by the way, a lot of them don't. But then as soon as they get cornered and all of a sudden, there's Ukrainian drone flying overhead, they want to surrender to it, right? Oh, I changed my mind. I apologize, Tracy, for speaking so long, but, it was a really important question, and I really wanted to, give fullest my opinion on this. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pickle Flickerbella. It is crucial to get to grips with all of this and the fact that it is such a different mentality over there and how they have arrived at that mentality as well. We've still got a couple more hands, but I can see Tracy has her hand up. So go ahead, Tracy.
Thank you, Terry. Yeah, I'd say don't apologise, Pickle Flicker Fella, at all. Thank you so much for saying all that. And on the note that it's meant for an emotional response, you're absolutely right. Every time we see the Russians release the videos of the despicable things that they do to Ukrainian prisoners of war, murdering them, torturing them, all these things, it's always timed for a certain to have a certain emotional reaction as well. A lot of that is when they're losing on the battlefield. Some of it is for other reasons, but a lot of it is linked to when they're losing on the battlefield and wanting to have massive impacts there, demoralize people, divide people, whether that's in Ukrainian society or amongst Western partners, all of those things. And it's interesting, actually, because I was thinking as the intensity of this propaganda in general and disinformation and all these psychological operations, it's increasing. I was thinking what's coming next, because the last time we had this massive increase, the distraction was what happened in Israel, and that despicable, horrible day that's marked in all of our memories, and those poor people that lost their lives then. And so I was thinking, I'm not thinking something on that scale is coming, but I was thinking something's coming next, because that's what they're trying to do, isn't it? In terms of distraction now from the peace summit, what's going on there. Also, of course, a lot of it is aimed at Western partners. Ukrainian intelligence have pointed out those psychological operations weeks ago. They said there's one specifically targeting what they call Western media, but like I said earlier, it's all around the world. And of course, trying to cause that division and to people to have no trust in military intelligence in particular. That's something else that one of the psychological operations is targeting. So it all goes into that when they release those videos, and that's exactly what they want you to do, is to be to spend talking about those things and not concentrating. I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about them, I don't mean it in that way, of course, but there's a balance to everything is what I'm trying to say. So we're going to leave soon anyway, you and I, Terry fella, so I think we should say our thank yous and goodbyes, because we have a few hands, so the conversation can continue nicely whilst we do these stealth switcheroos. How does that sound?
That sounds a great idea. And I'll let you drop first, Tracy. And while you are dropping and we're getting a new co-host stepping up, I think we'll go to, we'll go to Shartsi and then to Yanis.
Thank you.
And bye for now, Tracy. Sorry, Shartsi, go ahead.
That's okay. Thank you. Picklefella, I agree with you on one sense that you can't compare one war to the other, but I think that's more in the details of the materials, the tactics, the hardware. But when it comes to the torture, that is who Russians are. And they were that way in World War II. They were that way in World War I. It's their culture. And what I'm never able to wrap my head around is the acceptability, not just in the soldiers, but in the people themselves. And I reflect back to that whole embarrassing, humiliating, infuriating instance where the American soldiers at Abu Ghraib behaved unacceptably. And the military people in my family were so angry because that is what you gave your oath not to do, in a sense. That is so unacceptable to them. The fury of the military people in my family, it's a good thing they weren't around them, but they were court-martialed and they were imprisoned. So they paid a price for that. But the people as a whole, the anger at our own soldiers that would do something like that was palpable. And that too is culture. So your culture, whether you like it or not, but which makes it very difficult for us to understand that Russian culture, and I'm sure they don't understand us. But it's sick and it's sad and it's barbaric.
Well said, actually, Shartsy. And I think, as you say, there are people all around the world who will act and behave like that. But when that does happen in the civilized countries, then yes, they should be pulled up and dealt with accordingly. And hopefully, most of those guys were. And the fact, as you say, that your family was outraged, and I'm sure many other people in the States were as well. So thank you for that extra insight. Let's go to Yanis.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry for previously it was too loud. So just quick comment. You can compare wars in that sense that it's always the same, and we do not need to look in history to first war. It's enough to just check what Russians were doing during first Chechen war, and it's tremendous. It's just as brutal as it's happening right now in Ukraine. So different time, different president, but absolutely the same. So it's just Russian signature.
Thank you, Yanis. Very good points. And I think one of the biggest things that we have all learnt, and it is the mentality and the whole culture over in Russia. And it's something that I've said probably for about the last year now, is that I feel that the fact that this 3-day special military operation did not quite go according to plan, and almost every step along the way, I don't quite think that the Kremlin regime quite understood how much the Ukrainians would be standing up and standing against them, and revealing to the rest of the world, and for the rest of the world to actually listen and take it all on board. In some aspects, they've been a bit slow, but I really do think after, what are we now, sort of 27, 28 months into this war now, that even the most skeptical politicians are beginning to understand that we have got to help Ukraine to win, and win decisively, and Russia has got to be defeated, because we have got to show them that this sort of attitude and behavior and culture, mentality, whatever, cannot be allowed to continue if we are going to enable the world to become a safer place for our children and our grandchildren again in the future. So thank you, everybody, for that conversation. It's been a very interesting dive into it. So we should say thank you to Shartsy for raising the questions in the first place, and to all of our people who came up as speakers. So Pickle Flicker Fella, Yanis, Yenny, Arye, thank you very, very much. It really has been quite useful. Anyway, while I'm waiting for a co-host to come alongside me, it's getting a bit lonely up here, I will mention our fundraiser again. The fundraiser is the first tweet in the nest, and it's all about demining. We are raising funds to help the sappers with their demining operations, and the equipment that they have asked for. We always make sure that we ask them what it is that they need. We're going to be finding approximately 100 of each of these things. Leathermans, which are multi-tools, and they are specific multi-tools for demining. I understand there's various different ones. There'll be Leathermans for going fishing, or for doing your DIY, or fixing your car maybe, or something. But these are specifically designed for demining. Everything there together in one tool that they can take with them out into the field or wherever they're going. The other item that we are raising funds for is hearing protection. And it's not just simple ear defenders to block out the noise. There are quite substantial noises that these Ukrainians will have to, or the sappers from wherever they are, will have to put up with. They will be out in the field, possibly while there are explosions going on around them generally, but also they will be making explosions happen on some instances. So they need their hearing protected as much as possible. But in addition to that, these particular types of hearing protection also, while cutting out all of the excess noises from around, they also have inbuilt hearing and microphones, I assume, to enable them to communicate with each other and hear each other quite clearly. Understanding instructions from each other is absolutely crucial in such an environment. They might have spotted something, or they might be asking for instructions about something, where to go next. So being able to hear each other, even at a whisper type level, whilst blocking out most of the noise. The final thing is that if we have any funds left over, we'll be raising extra money for demining equipment generally. And so if you wish to donate, if you go to that first tweet in the nest where it says donate here with a little hand pointing to the link, click on that link and it will take you directly to the MriyaReport.org website and the donate page. If you don't want to click on the link, then you can go to MriyaReport, all one word, .org, and then find your own way to the donate page. And the donation is fairly straightforward and simple to do. To let you all know that we do not take PayPal. So if you try asking for that and somebody comes up and says, oh yes, just click on this link, you can donate to us via PayPal, know straight away that it is a scam. We have had several scammers try to infiltrate, as they often do with other charitable donations, and they are basically stealing money that could have gone to useful purposes. We are also a 501c3 charitable trust, and so that means that your donation is tax deductible if you are in the USA. And I believe you can make a small donation to cover the cost of using your credit card, debit card, or whatever. And that is optional. You don't have to pay that little bit. We are happy to accept whatever donations you can afford. We do not want your essential money. We are looking for you to only donate your disposable income, maybe cutting back on a cup of coffee somewhere, or a trip out, or you've just tucked a little bit to one side, and every single bit will help, whether it's a few dollars or a few $100, we don't mind. Failing that, it might not be anywhere near your payday, so you might not be able to donate at all at the moment, in which case retweeting the space, liking the space, even though Elon doesn't seem to think much of liking anymore, we do, and putting a comment in to help boost the visibility of the tweet itself. We would really appreciate all of that. Thank you very, very much. I think that's covered everything. And I can see that alongside me, we have Stephen. Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well indeed, Terry. Thank you very much indeed for that. Perhaps a little rusty in the CH seat, but I will no doubt pick up the traces rather quickly. I'm not. Are you going to be dropping down soon, and I'll be joined by somebody else, or are we co-hosting together for a little while? What's the thing? Sorry, I hadn't checked the schedule.
That's all right. Tracy was going to be carrying on, but something urgent has cropped up. So she has also had to drop. But I believe that Arya is going to come up and sit alongside you for a while once I've got out of the way. And yeah, I've got a thumbs up from him just to reassure me. So it's been lovely speaking to you. I hope to hear about your adventures over the next few sessions, maybe. Good to see you back as a co-host again. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. Fantastic conversation that we have had. Quite an in-depth, serious conversation, but nonetheless a very, very valuable one. So thank you, everybody, for coming up and sharing your views. And in the meantime, I shall disappear for now and say Slava Ukraini.
Harem Slava, and thank you indeed, Terry. Hello all once again. I'm here to irritate you with my ambiguous accent. But just to follow up on what Terry was saying, indeed, the demining. So with regard to the fundraiser that we're running at the present time, demining in Ukraine is one of the most urgent priorities, as we are now up to 180,000 square kilometers, what's that, 18 million hectares, I think, in an absolutely staggering amount of land is waiting to be demined. Unfortunately, significant sections of that cannot be accessed because they are still in contested areas of the front line. But there are really quite large areas, for example, in Kherson and Izium areas, and many others, which have been mined either by emplaced surface or subsurface munitions, or by scatterable mines, such as the butterfly mines, I think known as the PFM1s, which unfortunately look rather like toys, small green things that get lost in the leaf litter. Some are very large anti-tank mines, such as the TM62. There's lots of anti-personnel mines, and many of these mines also are associated with various forms of anti-tamper devices. They may be tripwires, they may be vibration sensitive. Often they have a little subsidiary munition put underneath them, so that even if they are deactivated when they're lifted up, they go off, killing whoever it is handling them if they are not aware of that particular danger. And given all of these complexities, it is extremely important that demining is carried out by trained, well-equipped EOD, that is explosive ordnance disposal experts. Ukraine has some in its civil defense and military forces, but of course it is having to deal with the active threat of the ongoing invasion, and so there are also many EOD outfits that have come in, often on a voluntary basis or charitable basis, to assist with this operation. But even though the number of such exceeds 200, it is very slow, very dangerous work, and as a result, unfortunately, the likes of farmers who have returned to their land only to find it mined have been trying in many cases to demine it themselves, and of course have no proper equipment, no proper training, and are being maimed and or killed in the process in quite a few very sad incidents. But there are also children and other civilians who live in these areas who may wander about and unknowingly step on something, trip something off, or indeed pick up the likes of those butterfly PFM1 mines, and in the case of a child, almost certainly be killed, or else at the very least severely maimed. This is only to mention the actual anti-personnel and anti-vehicular mines. There are also many hundreds of other kinds of munitions, such as air scatterable cluster munitions, which in the case of Russian munitions rarely have self-destruct mechanisms, often have anti-tamper mechanisms whereby they have often a high failure rate. And these munitions will, they're designed mainly to go off more or less immediately. But in many cases, this doesn't work. Some of them are designed to have a certain proportion go off immediately, and then a subsidiary section either go off at a later timed period, or else sit around as a ground-based or semi-hidden threat. Often looking quite innocuous, like a machine part or something like that, which, of course, if tampered with, if it has a tilt mechanism or vibration mechanism, will go off and kill whoever's around it, or at least severely maim them. So there could not be a greater need than exists in Ukraine than for properly equipped and trained EOD experts to go in and clear these areas for release to the civilian population, so that they are no longer under threat of this kind of monstrosity. And so, yes, in order for these individuals to operate safely, they need equipment, and this fundraiser is precisely for that equipment. So please do indeed give generously as you're able, without hurting yourselves financially. But if you have a little money left over that you can consider giving to this cause, because once again, as with so many in MriyaReport, it will directly save lives and save the lives of children and innocents who otherwise may be maimed and killed by these evil devices. Then please do so to the extent that you can. And if you cannot, then do not worry. Simply share the space, share the fundraiser, even just talk about it with your friends, share the message, share the idea, and share support for Ukraine, because that is all valuable. Thank you. Lovely to have you up with us, Arya. How are you today?
I'm doing okay, Stephen. Last couple of days have been a little off, but today, thank God, I am doing fine. So I decided to pop up here to give Tracy a little bit of a break because she had a double shift. So it's a pleasure to join you. I have some news, but before I do, I think we should continue our discussion on Strabos and the finer aspects of his geography for the next 2 hours real quick. Bad jokes aside, there is some news pertaining to Ukraine and Russia that I think is important to bring up.
Please go ahead.
Quickly. Vladimir Putin has sacked 4 defense ministers and appointed his cousin, Anna Trelevskaya, I can't pronounce that, nor do I care to try, to fill one of the vacancies according to Kremlin doctrine, which will bring, and then there is more information as it develops. So that is pretty big that he's starting to stick in family members who do not have experience in anything resembling that sort of a role. He is getting very nervous, I would imagine, if that is the case. So I thought that was worth bringing up.
Absolutely, that's astounding news. I'd not heard any of that. I guess it's sort of breaking. Looks like it. Yeah. Wow. So he has engaged in a purge of generals. He's replaced the defense minister with a Soviet era command economist. Replaced the overwatch of the intelligence services with a corrupt ex, fire services guy. Fired the most trusted general on the general staff. Most trusted, that is, by his troops, which is the most important kind of trust to have. Arrested many. In fact, he was arrested. That guy too. Arrested many other, in some cases incompetent, but in some cases very competent generals, in what looks very much like a fear purge. And this is, again, very interesting, as you say, replacing one of it looks like a deputy defense minister with a with basically so yes. Putin sacked deputy defense ministers Nikolai Pankov, Ruslan Salikov, Tatyana Shevtsova, and Pavel Popov. Yes, and appointed Sivileva, who Russian media said is the daughter of Putin's cousin, as deputy defense minister. Yeah, I mean, this kind of thing it's an act of clearly of desperation. You don't sack defense that many defense staff during an ongoing hot war if it's going well, and it obviously isn't. But more than that, to pack the court with people personally associated with you smacks of fear, and he indeed, no doubt, is afraid. Thank you for that. That's very interesting, Arya. What is your interpretation? Something similar to mine?
Yes, I think he's getting very afraid, and he's trying desperately to fix the economy before it fails to the point where it actually threatens his role. Anna Trulevskilieva is sorry, give me 1 second. I want to say this correctly. Is the daughter of one of his cousins. And in any case, she has less military experience than the average person who is listening here to this program does. She is a Russian businesswoman, an oligarch who has gotten very rich through backhanded dealings. She owns over a 70% stake in one of Russia's smaller energy companies. So the fact that he is pulling her, right, somebody who has absolutely no experience for something like this, other than possible the economic aspect to it, right, is solely being done because there is loyalty. If he goes down, she goes down, and she loses what she has, right? So I'm trying to find more information on her. It's just all business stuff. It's she bought this. She has this money. She is married. If you'll give me 1 second, I'm curious who her husband is. And I just got his name. Her husband is Sergei Trulevliev, who is the Minister of Energy of the Russian Federation. So it's interesting, the Minister of the Energy for the Russian Federation's wife owns a 70% stake in at least one energy company because there's no corruption there. She also happens to be Putin's relative. He's a former naval officer, and he appears to be about as far in with Putin as any of them are. And the name of the group is in March 2017, he received a 70% stake in, or they received a 70% stake in Colmar Group LLC. They also had a Swiss company, Colmar Sales and Logistics. And his brother is the directing head of it.
Well, that's marvelous. It's exactly who you would want in the middle of a crisis, financial crisis for the country, economic crisis in general, social crisis, and military crisis in a failing, evil, pointless invasion. Of course, you would want to sack your defense ministry staff who might actually have experience in the matter, and appoint, well, an obviously corrupt relative. I mean, who wouldn't? You know, it speaks to the strength of the Putinist state. I see we have a hand in Wojta. Please go ahead, Wojta.
Hi, Stephen. Hi, Arya, Jenny, and everybody. I hope you can hear me well. Have you discussed, I have a different topic. Have you discussed the explosion in Czech military space?
No, we have not. At least not that. Sorry, I've only been on for a few minutes in advance of my coming out. Arya has been listening longer. Have we discussed that, Arya?
Not since I tuned in, and I would love to hear any updates on the Czech military and what is going on there, as that is something that greatly interests me. So you have the floor, man.
Okay, well, yeah, there is I don't know whether the correct word is military space, you know, some dedicated area which is for training of the military. And there has been an explosion. One person killed, 8 more wounded, which is yeah, not good. And based on information which I have found out, yet the Czech Ministry of Defense, they claiming it has been you know, the, how's it called, accident. Yes, that's the word. And and yeah, we don't know what happened over there. What we know is that in Libava, which is the area, the space, there has been training also the Ukrainian soldiers, and it is this space is dedicated also for like heavy technique, like artillery or tanks or armored vehicles. So yeah, it's totally possible that it has been an accident, but in Czech Republic we have experience with things blowing up, and coincidentally Russian agents being around. And yeah, so hopefully this one was just an accident. But what I wanted to mention, you know, like the context, which is like important, when there was like last explosion of the magazine of the private company, you know, where GRU guys that has been involved in Salisbury, you know, it has been done by the same couple of guys, this Mishkin and Chepiga, or what is their name. And what is interesting in my opinion is that they had a contact with somebody from the, you know, I'm talking now about the 2014 explosion. So what is interesting is that that the GRU people had a contact with somebody who was working in the in that company who had the magazine, the storage of the ammunition, and they were in contact for several years and wishing each other like happy birthday and this kind of stuff. So they knew each other very well. So we know that GRU has penetrated into some private contractors who has been trading with the ammunition. I think in 2014 it has the explosion was about the tank ammunition. So yeah, I guess we all will be following closely what has happened and whether there will be some Russian involvement or whether it's just a really bad accident. Yeah, so that's the update from my side, I guess. So back to you, Arya.
So thank you for bringing that up, Volt Tech. I took a look. It appears that another soldier has been reported as being injured in that, and according to the army and the hospital, 2 soldiers with moderate injuries were taken by helicopter to the university hospital in the nearby city of Olmanek, about 125 miles east of the capital of Prague, according to the hospital spokesman. Said some big news on top of the already big news from Putin. He has announced he will be taking a trip to go visit his buddy Little Kim in North Korea on June 18th through June 19th, which will be his first visit there in 24 years. And then afterwards, he will be making a quick stop in Vietnam. So this is very big news if he's going there to kiss Kim Jong-un's boots for some more weapon systems or make some agreements with them. And same with Vietnam. And 100% sure he's untouchable in North Korea, but I hope the Ukrainians can move some of those special forces from Africa over in the Middle East over to Vietnam before he gets there. That would be a lovely surprise. Back to you, Stephen.
Oh yeah, many thanks. Sorry, so you were talking about Putin's visit. Is that right? Yes.
Yeah, they just announced.
Yeah,
that he will be going.
I thought. Yeah, I mean, I'd heard about the North Korean visit, but the Vietnam one's a little bit of a surprise. Vietnam has a very uneasy relationship with China. As you know, the last hot war that China fought at all was discounting the punch-ups with India, was in fact with Vietnam, and Vietnam handed their backsides back to them. And there is no love lost between those nations. So it was interesting. One wonders what China feels about Putin visiting that nation. I doubt that they were very happy about it. I do see we have a hand up. We have 2, in fact, now. But IT fella specifically came up when we were discussing the Czech blast, so perhaps it was related to that. Please go ahead, IT fella.
Yeah, just looking at the AP report on that blast in Czechia. The accident took place in Libava, about 250 kilometers east of Prague, as ammunition technicians were being trained, the ministry said. Those injured were transported to hospitals in the city of Olomouc. Military police are investigating the cause of the explosion. And they reported it as 1 killed and 8 injured. So we'll see. Maybe we'll get an update on that before long.
Yeah, I noted that too. And I mean, obviously, it's possible to speculate about anything at the moment, but it feels to me, I mean, the ammunition technicians' training is rather a tricky moment, isn't it? You know, specifically training, presumably with handling live rounds, perhaps originally with dummy rounds, perhaps it was something that was thought to be a dummy round, perhaps it's emplacement of fuses. It's always a dangerous sort of period when you are training ammunition technicians, isn't it? For kind of obvious reasons, I suppose. But thank you for that, IT fella. Nice to hear your voice.
Yeah, lots of room for speculation at this point, but it looks like we really don't have enough actual news yet.
I fully agree. Oyvind has his hand up. Welcome up, Oyvind.
Yeah, thank you. Putin appoint family members to positions. Is this a demand from China? They prefer family dynasties for their minions. Family dynasties is predictable and is who is next in line. China value something that is predictable. They value traditions. So I just guess, is this demand from China? Thank you.
So just to respond to that, and Stephen can pipe in afterwards if he's got a different opinion. I do not believe at this point the Chinese have that level of control past their generalized clout over Russia to be able to force Putin to do pretty much anything that isn't economic, to help him, or diplomatic. They might have the ability to be like, Putin says, I don't want to do something in the UN. And they say, look, you need to do this. And he'll be like, okay, I'll do it. But they don't have direct control. I'm not saying he couldn't get there, right? There are multiple scenarios in which the Chinese can either directly or as a client, or turn Russia into a client. And in some way exert, control past economic control. But they're not there yet. This is solely, in my opinion, because again, none of us have insight into Putin's mind. All we know is what we've been able to observe, what has been written on him, and what we know. But this tends to be something that people do when they are more concerned about loyalty than the downsides of having somebody that isn't that is competent but might change loyalty. Right. So he's getting very afraid if he's starting to put economic people into effect. Or there's another possibility, right? She is the wife of the head of the energy, right, for all of Russia. Okay. So this might even just be a favor, a thank you, right? He's done a good job by standards of Russia in dealing with the attacks and the production and continuing to get stuff out through gray areas. So there is a possibility that it's just a thank you from Putin, because it's not a big deal. He'll be more loyal, she'll be loyal, and it's just one of several deputy ministers, right? It's not like she's in charge of anything specifically. But we have seen reshaping of this, and I don't know if it's more he's just going through the list of yes men, and when one screws up he goes to the next one, or if he's getting legitimately afraid and starting to put in, and we're going to see more family members or subordinates, right? Because that's what he used to do. It was sycophants and former subordinates that he would put into positions. But he's become much more unpredictable. We're seeing more family members come in. We're seeing more people that also can actually do the job in regards to the economists he brought in regards to the lady with the Russian school system. As evil as she is, she's done a decent job. Past the propaganda and all the crimes against humanity she is helping commit. So with that, Stephen, do you have anything to add, or should we go to Oyvind and IT?
Oh no, look, I generally concur. I very strongly doubt Putin's character is very much one of a he is a little man in a big man's suit. He somewhere in there is still the bullied schoolboy and the one who didn't actually make it very high in the KGB, and nothing makes him angrier than being belittled or feeling he is not in control of everything. So I fundamentally doubt that he would ever take direction. If, in other words, if China had told him not to do this, he might. But I don't. I know. I see this as entirely internal positioning. I think your analysis is exactly accurate. It's either rewarding and or packing the corridors of power with compliant individuals, but ones indeed, as you note, who have a personal interest in the maintenance of the status quo and in the maintenance of Uncle Vova as their ruler. Reminds me of that line from Julius Caesar, where Caesar says of Cassius, "Yon Cassius has a lean and hungry look about him. Such men are dangerous. I like men about me who are fat." Well, this woman is clearly probably very physically thin, because that's the typical thing. I would imagine I'd be surprised if there were lip fillers involved as well. But the most important thing is she's very rich, and she's very rich off the system. And this makes her loyal. She depends, as you say, on the Tsar. And if the Tsar falls, she falls. So loyalty is guaranteed. Oyvind, please go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was a touch of irony in my question. I'm going to post it anyway because it's upset the Vatniks, and I love that. Thank you. Slava Ukraini.
Hello, Slava. IT fella, you had your hand up very briefly, but it dropped down again. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think for those that haven't read it yet, you really need to take a look at a thread that Beefeater posted last week about the structure of politics in Russia. It is a mafia state, and it's not like in New York where you have one Don ruling them all. It's more like there's half a dozen clans, and there's constant infighting between them. And Putin is at the top of one of those clans, trying to orchestrate everything. So if he's getting nervous about what's going on in Ukraine, and undoubtedly a lot of other people in the clans are quite upset with what's going on in Ukraine, he is going to be making moves to replace anybody that he doesn't trust with members of his clan. And I think that's what we're seeing. And obviously the daughter of one of his ministers is a perfect fit for that. So I expect we'll see more of this. But the whole nature of Putin's regime is that it comes from a collection of people from his clan and those from other clans that he has put in place in order to maintain peace with them. Whether or not these people have any competence whatsoever in the positions they're being placed in really doesn't have anything to do with it. But it is interesting that he's gotten pushed to the point where he is brazenly putting in place people that clearly have no experience or competence in military matters. It shows me that he is indeed very much afraid, or knows that he's losing, and he's grasping at straws at this point to hang on to his wealth and power within Russia without regard to pretty much anything else.
100%. I just wanted to. Did we lose Oyvind? I think he dropped. I thought he finished speaking, but I think he dropped.
He dropped, yeah, I believe.
Just one correction to what he was saying. I just don't want it misheard from anybody who came later to misunderstand. The lady who was appointed is the daughter of Putin's first cousin. She is married, not the daughter of the head of the energy of Russia's Minister of Energy. So that is important, a distinction, right? She's not his daughter. But in any case, over to you, Volchik.
Wojta?
Yeah, thank you.
Is it Vojta? I'm sorry, am I horribly mispronouncing it?
Well,
Vojta?
yeah, that's actually like pretty correct. yeah, you are one of the worst in the butchering my name. There are people, much more competent in this. However, I've just checked, with Bing AI, the question, how many deputy ministers are in the Russian Ministry of Defense, and the last known number, according to the AI, was 3 first deputy ministers and 6 like regular deputy ministers. So there are in total 9 of them, and this is like emblematic for Russian government, in my opinion, because there are always so many deputy ministers. I guess they have so much things to manage that they need so many deputy ministers, or it's like another version of the, let's say, knight title or something, but yeah, that's just an opinion of somebody who don't know things, just like a regular guy opinion.
Interesting, though. So effectively, that is very nearly. That's 45% of the total deputy ministers have been replaced in this one event. Now that it's very unlikely that they were all equally incompetent or whatever. It sounds to me like he heard through a little birdie told him that perhaps the 4 who were replaced were not necessarily as loyal as they might otherwise have been to him, or perhaps they'd been grumbling in some way, perhaps they were doing things that he didn't like, in other words, trying to competently reform the military. There's always an uneasy balance for a dictator about the military. You want a strong military for foreign wars, but you want a weak military domestically, because the military is the only force ultimately capable of challenging you, particularly if you're, as Putin is, naturally a leader of or a player in the security state, as in the intelligence community. The military is unfamiliar territory. It's a sort of brother and sisterhood of individuals with whom you share no real common ground. And of course, when you are ordering from the top the shots in a losing war, where your conventional military is in fact being beggared and humiliated, then that makes the military increasingly dangerous to you. One wonders whether Putin any longer really thinks that he can win anything significant in this war. I mean, his recent wish list in terms of the peace proposals is a peace. We will stop shooting as soon as you give us everything we want, at least for now, so that we can then rebuild and come and get the rest. Just give us everything, and then we will consider. It's utterly pathetic. But it is a show of weakness, not of strength. Nobody took that seriously, not even the Russians. And within 2 days of him making that absurd speech, he removes close to half the deputy defense ministers. It's certainly not bad news, and I smell the rot in the core administration. I believe that is also how Arya would see it. No?
I would say that pretty close enough where the slight nuances and difference are not worth my time or your time going, or anybody else's listening, trying to pick apart. I agree with you. So I was just reading an article from the Hill that somebody sent me. It's an opinion piece on if China has officially made Russia a colony. So I was listening to you, and I heard about 80% of what you said, Stephen. And as far as what I heard, I had nothing to add.
No matter. Well, I'm quite happy
Thank
to
you.
pivot to that, or would you like a little bit of further time to consider that, because it is interesting, isn't it? I mean, I believe China, at least economically, has Russia by the short and curlies. And I've certainly been seeing. So there was an interesting analysis piece by Igor Strelkov's Gherkin, one of his associates. I can't remember the guy's name, but anyway, where he gives a pretty sober analysis of the military situation, basically saying, we've screwed up. We're not going to get anything good out of this. It's going to get worse and worse. And all we've managed to do really is make ourselves a military laughingstock of the world. We've achieved virtually none of our ambitions. And we have vassalized ourselves to China. And that was one of Strelkov's buddies. So, yeah. Angry Ants is up. I think we'll go to him while you complete reading the article. Angry Ants, lovely to have you aboard.
Hey, how you guys doing? And sorry to just come up and jump into the middle of the conversation. It's my
Oh, you never
time.
need to say sorry. You're always very welcome.
Do not apologize, Angry.
No.
Do not apologize.
Well, and I'm coming up with I'm a little heated right now. Sometimes Angry Ants need to be a little heated, but I just wanted to kind of give a warning out to some folks. Not only do I work to support Ukraine, I do a lot of work involved in other businesses in DC, working to get people elected, things like that. And we were doing opposition research this morning and over the weekend over one of the largest Republican gatherings in the country, Turning Point USA, which is the core base of the youth movement of the Republican Party. I was appalled to hear dozens of speakers mention Ukraine. Signs about Ukraine, asking to stop of support, saying we're spending too much money. And not only was it from random speakers, elected leaders, party leaders across the country, the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party, Donald Trump, came on stage as the keynote speaker and called support for Ukraine the biggest scam in history. And I'm sorry to say, folks, but what we've been doing for the last 2 years, 2.5 years, the hours of work, the struggle and the pain to support and to fight to get what we can, that's no scam to me. The scam is leaving our allies. The scam is thinking that we can just, hand over half of Ukraine to stop war, which is the only plan they have. The words are vile. The things that he said about Zelensky during this keynote address to the Republican base, the largest group of youth activists, the ones that will be going out, knocking on doors, talking to voters for the next 6 months, next 4 months. I just want to make sure that there's a lot of times we do a lot of whataboutisms and two sides to this shit. We need to look at the writing on the wall. In 2020, I spent time campaigning with people like Alex Vindman and other members of Congress in certain areas like Wisconsin and in Ohio, places where we knew the support for Ukraine, the support for Ukraine, the votes in those states would lead to either support or anti-support of Ukraine. We opposed Ron Johnson, we opposed J.D. Vance, two of the biggest anti-Ukrainian voices on Capitol Hill. At the same time that we were opposing them and we were using Ukraine as the messaging because that's what we cared about, that was what our mission was, we heard, well, we shouldn't do it by two sides. We should make it more bipartisan. There's a clear fact. The largest group of youth activists in the Republican Party spent the weekend trying to figure out how to stop aid to Ukraine. And the presumptive nominee, who could quite well be the president of the United States and have massive control over what happens with Ukraine, called what we are doing today, what we're doing right now at this moment, trying to support Ukraine, the biggest scam in history. And it's appalling to me. It's appalling to me that anybody who supports Ukraine would try to placate these words. There's words and actions now. We've seen the words and the actions. So I just wanted to come up after a morning of listening to anti-Ukrainian rhetoric to let you know that I'm pretty fired up, and I'm going to be doing everything I can to make sure that over half of the Republican Party who voted against Ukraine, will face that thunder this year, hopefully by voters. But this placating, this whataboutism, what about this or what about this? There are people that are openly saying they do not support Ukraine, and it's the biggest scam in history, and that comes from the leader of their party. And sorry that I'm a little hot and brought up American politics in this, but I really want to make sure, especially for our European listeners who many times get confused because there's so much anti-rhetoric against the administration that has done more to help an ally than any country in history, versus someone who calls supporting Ukraine the biggest scam in history. And we all need to make sure we take a look at where we're at and the reality of what this last 2.5 years and how hard it has been to support Ukraine and fight in the trenches for them. And
Absolutely.
it's not just in America. But anyway, sorry to go on a rant.
No. It's fine. It's fine.
But I really wanted
listen,
to bring that up this morning.
I'm very glad you did. And I realize that there are some co-hosts who are less tolerant of sort of what they may perceive as overfocus on American politics. I actually personally am very cognizant of the extreme importance of American politics in this sphere. So you will not find me attempting to suppress you at all. And indeed, I'm outraged and horrified to hear those very words that you said. It is the poisoning of the minds of the American youth. The phrase "the biggest scam in history." Well, first, let's just start out by acknowledging that everything is always the most extreme hyperbole with that absolute buffoon. We all know who that is. I don't even need to say everything. It's the greatest. It's the biggest. It's the worst. It is utterly childish. It is the speech of a toddler. But without even, you can dismiss that out of hand and outright just from that point of it being an obviously childish hyperbole. But of course, there is no justification whatsoever to the idea that this is any kind of scam in any sense. It's like watching a woman being raped and begging for help and saying to her, "Oh, you're just trying to scam me out of something," while just allowing the rape to continue. That is the level of calumny here in that kind of statement. So your anger is very justified. I share it.
And Stephen, sorry, just the last point of this is that so many times when we had these conversations, it's really easy it's just the extremists on one side or one side of the end. This is the base of the Republican Party. This is the most in tune, the largest group of activists. Turning Point USA is the future of the Republican Party, and that's what they've been building towards. And that's what I want to make sure that when you hear the word, it's a both sidism. We've got like 6 people who even voted for Ukraine, but they sometimes don't support war. This is the base of the party, and we've just got to be much more cognizant of it. And because we can't let things like this just slide by without reaction.
I 100% agree with you. 100. I have a lot more to say about this, but I noticed that Arya wants to say something, and also Mary has her hand up, so I'll stand by for that. But please stay with us, Angry. Please do, and be as angry as you wish. This is the space for it. You came here for the right kind of therapy, and you'll get it.
So angry ants, I generally also tend to take a similar view as Stephen when it comes to the political issues, assuming I don't feel somebody is being unfairly partisan. I don't generally mind discussing it if it is interwoven and affecting. Sometimes I do think some of the guests that come up are very partisan because it's a very emotional topic. And I do sometimes take issue with that because that's a different issue. right? Um, just one thing I need to clarify with what you said. You said that Turning Point USA is the youth arm of the Republican Party. It's not. They have multiple youth arms, both for high school and college. It is, though, the largest conservative and the largest growing youth organization in the United States, right? So it's important to make that distinction between them being an arm of the Republican Party and being,
That's not correct,
you know,
Ira. I'm sorry, but that's not correct.
if I may ask how you believe what I said was incorrect, I'm curious.
So Turning Point USA is a conservative, set of organization for conservative youth that has direct connections, collaborations, and partnerships with the Republican Party of the United States of America, the GOP, the actual national organization, and on the local level. The groups, the college students, the activism groups, they work with inside of the GOP overall political mechanisms. They are used as operatives, as volunteers, as staff. They are used to register people to vote for the Republican Party. They are funded by the largest Republican donors, and they have, again, national agreements and protocols with the national GOP, which is the Republican Party, and the local GOP in many different areas. So I'm not sure how that doesn't make them part of the Republican Party.
Okay, so I think the issue I'm taking is the terminology, right? Because there is a difference between independent organizations, right, that have those ties, that have everything you just said, which I agree with you 100%, and an official organ, right? Especially when there already are official organs. It doesn't mean anything you're saying is less important or less true, right? I want to make that clear. It's just a matter of nuance. Kirk and the other heads of Turning Point USA are lockstep in arm with MAGA, right? I agree with that.
MAGA
completely at
is
this
the
point.
Republican base. It's the Republican Party. That's what
It's a very large percentage of it. Yes, it's a very large percentage.
We need to take a step back really quick. We're not talking about Republican voters. We're talking about the Republican apparatus and the GOP, the Republican Party, the big R, not just if you're a conservative voter who may not have a party at this moment. We're talking about the actual apparatus, the professional apparatus of the Republican Party, which is completely controlled by MAGA. From messaging
that I wouldn't disagree with, Angry, 100%, 100%.
Which GOP
you don't need to sell me on that.
Which GOP official does not that you would disagree with that? Actual GOP official, part of the party.
There are a couple. I would have to double check on the names, but there are a couple within the Senate and Congress. But they're a handful, right? It is a very small amount that are willing to openly talk out against. So I agree with you, right? As far as the activism of the party and those that are loud, you're 100% correct, right? And I completely agree with you. I just think it's very important, right? Especially if a lot of people's fears do come to pass, to not to be careful with giving the nuance there, like you did then. Because without it, right, you're going to alienate those Republicans, which are still a large portion of the party, even if they're not the most vocal, that do support Ukraine or aren't fans of Trump, but for whatever reason think he is the lesser of the two evils, right? And if he does get elected, those people are going to be very important that those bridges have not been burnt. Because of generalizations made, due to emotion, when it's easy enough to put that little bit of nuance in there and not completely, go, because that's also part of what MAGA wants, is it to be so completely torn. In the same way the far left wants that, right? The destruction of these communal bonds is something that hurts us. It's what the Russians want. It's what the Chinese want. So that was my only point, right? I agree with everything you said, and I appreciate you know adding that nuance on angry, because as I said, I do think that is very important. But your point is correct, right? There are certain ideas, there are a handful of ideas, Turning Point. I've seen things from them on that I agree, but there's a lot of very bad ideas. And the pivot of MAGA within the last couple of years on various political issues, including Ukraine, is very scary. And you are correct that there are many people within that organization that have bought into either Russian propaganda or isolationist propaganda, or have simply come to see this as part of the larger culture war, right? When it has nothing to do with the culture war and should be a completely bipartisan issue for any American that cares about our values, our way of life, and not eventually having to have our children fight in wars. Back to you.
Yeah, I will say that there's a lot of conservative voters who probably don't have a party today. I think there's a lot of conservative voters that need to be taking a look at themselves and the party that they're going to vote for, the people they're going to vote for, especially if you're a proclaimed Ukraine supporter. We have to remember that over half of one party voted against the most critical aid package for Ukraine in the entire war. Over half of the elected officials, not even looking at the polling, not looking at the local party officials who are adamantly against supporting Ukraine at the local level by vastly outnumbered numbers. So I think the question for me is if this organization represents the party, the conservative movement, the largest conservative movement of youth in America, the person who represents the party, who is manifest as the leader of the party, who controls the fundraising apparatus of the party, the Republican Party, that controls the messaging that comes out of organizations like Heritage and all these, think tanks that are not exactly associated but are part of the overall apparatus. If they're saying these things out loud, like they did this weekend, as someone who claims to be a Republican voter but supports Ukraine, where are those voices at? Where are those voices at? Because I'm waiting to hear them. We've got a couple of really good committee leaders who remained very silent until it felt good for them to be able to talk about this, that support Ukraine. There's about a solid quarter to a heavy third of elected members of Congress that are Republicans that really truly support Ukraine. But as these voters, these people who you're talking about, who are sitting out there that we're going to have to try and placate, and we're going to have to kind of bow down to if to get scraps if this comes to, are they going to still vote for someone who calls Ukraine, supporting Ukraine, saving thousands of Ukrainians' lives, building a global coalition, getting billions of dollars of aid to them? Are they going to still vote, and are they going to still support the people that are saying that they're part of the biggest scam in history? Or are they going to step up and maybe try and either create their own party or take back their party, which will be very difficult at this point in time, because I don't believe a lot of you have your own party anymore, because that's what's happened since 2016. And I feel bad for people like my uncle. So I want to know what they're going to be doing, because we've seen a lot of people who were very much, talking the truth a couple of years ago, but now they've turned completely around and turned completely into supporting and again, spreading the idea that this is not part of the major platform and the major conversation of the Republican Party. And that's where I have a problem with us kind of, side and whitewashing these issues. And again, that's why I'm a little upset this morning, because I've had to listen to a bunch of prominent Republicans talk about cutting aid to Ukraine. That and that was the messaging that went out to the youth movement of the conservatives of America and the Republican Party.
Could we just go to a couple of hands, because there were two, Mark and somebody else who Jane, who did have their hands up, but who have since dropped for whatever reason. I don't know whether it's technical or otherwise, but perhaps we could, just before we continue on this topic, Arya, if you don't mind going to a hand, what do you think? Okay, then
Go for
Danny,
it.
please. You have your hand up.
Yeah, just very conscious that I don't really want to upset anyone, but I might say some upsetting things. It's that if you're a member of that party, those things will be happening in your name. It means that you agree with them. It means that you support them. If you're still a member of that party and you don't agree with the direction in which it's going, you should be doing something to change things. Either switch, make your voice heard, whatever you need to do. It's time to do it. I don't think it was unclear to any of us watching from afar that this is going to happen. All of the, oh, it's both sides support. Both sides have people that support it, but maybe not the majority. It kept degrading over time, right? Initially, it says, oh, it's bipartisan for sure. Support is bipartisan. Then it's, oh, some people don't really support it, and then more people don't support it, et cetera, et cetera. And we just kept watching it degrade. And it was very predictable. It was clear that that's what's going to happen to any of us from watching from afar, because it was always a lie. It was always how much they could get away with until they actually say what they want to say. And it's because they know that they're going to lose. And it's a last-ditch effort to oppose everything the other side is saying that they will do. I bet if your candidate would get an offer from the Democrat that said, oh, if we get more votes, we're actually gonna renounce the presidency and give it to the Republicans. They'll find a way to oppose that as well. It's just that their setting is on, say, the exact opposite of what your opponent is saying, and that's all they care about. If you're still a member of that party when your justice system has convicted him of a felony, I don't know, question yourself. I do it all the time. We do it all the time. We're always forced to vote the lesser evil. You should probably vote the lesser evil as well. Otherwise, you're just part of it, aren't you? So I hope I didn't upset too many people, but it's clear what's happening, right? They're no longer hiding behind any of the lies that they used to. So pay attention to what they're saying. When people tell you who they are, you usually will speak truth, right? So yeah, don't ignore it. Don't just say, "Oh no, I'm sure it's just a few people that they'll eventually find their way." No, they won't.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, Danny? I don't think you, by the way, offended anybody. Although I would personally suggest a slightly different strategy, and we'll go on to Linda in a moment. But although I'm sure Arya has a follow-up comment, but looking at it from the outside, I do feel we need to maintain a connection with people who are politically Republican-minded. I'm really neither particularly. I'm a true centrist. I have sort of center-right, center-left views mostly, not particularly radically in either direction, but I would be the classic floating voter, you could say. But I have sympathy with people who have more entrenched views to the left or to the right or whatever. And I do feel it's very important to support those people who are traditional Republicans, who have strong Republican views of the traditional kind, and to help them really resist the insurgent movement that is basically eaten out the core of their party from the inside. And I refer, for example, to Marjorie Taylor Greene has been screaming and shouting, really, in the most undignified, absurd. I've been calling her to well, I mean, she just sounds like a drunk person in a roadhouse, not a member of Congress, in her recent communications. And she's been shrieking a lot about, very antagonistic to the Republican Party, saying that she hates it, she doesn't want it, and calls it part of the uniparty, the globalist elite, blah blah blah, all these stupid buzzwords. My question to her would be, well, if that's the case, why do you stand or sit rather as a Republican, renounce your party affiliation and be an independent, see what happens then? I've been rather disappointed to see so many Republican Congress women and congressmen sit in silence, as Angry Ants has pointed out, and others, you as well, Danny, and just allow the steamroller to crush the soul of their party. Many of them have decided to retire out of politics altogether. But they say in protest. But what I say to them is, you're bloody cowards. Stand and fight. You're just willing to lose your party to this insurgent group. Really? Is that what the end of your political career will be? It seems like it. And I'm unimpressed with that. Arya, if you have comment, and then I think we'll go to Linda after that. Thank you.
So just really quickly, in regards to what Angry and Danny said, I agree with you guys. Angry, I really do think the Republican Party will fracture. And then I feel very similarly, although at the moment they are not as big a threat, with the far left of the Democratic Party. And what I do think will happen is, once Trump is no longer, whether or not he gets elected or doesn't get elected, right after he is no longer in the picture anymore, and he has been, he cannot be president again. I do believe that the same will happen to the Democratic Party, right? They are being held together right now with the hatred of Trump. And I do feel that the extreme left, along with various aspects of the progressive movement, will pivot in the same way the far right and the MAGAs have pivoted the Republican Party. But as I've said before, at the moment, the threat, which is larger, I think, is Trump by far, right? And as you said, if I had watched the sessions of congressmen after congressmen after congressmen, or other Republican Party mouthpieces popping up and having throwing out Vladnik and isolationist propaganda, I would be pretty pissed too right now. I get very upset when I see that, and I have similar stance to Stephen on this. A lot of my views are very center. I do have more views on the farther left and farther right. There are certain things I believe in that you would probably believe are conservative values, and then other things that I believe in that you would say that are very left-wing values. And I tend to base it on whatever particular information I've been presented, the best arguments I've seen, the best data I've seen, and it evolves, right? So if you look at my various stances on certain issues, some of the issues are the same I've had since high school, because I have yet to see any data that is a adequate explanation or argument as to why I was, why I should change it. And then other things I've changed and gone back and forth on, and completely, evolved on. But there are a lot of hands, so I'm going to move on. Stephen, save me. I know Linda was
next,
that's
all right. I was just going to give you
Danny.
the order. It was Linda, Danny, Ink, Pickled, and Scouts in that order. So please go ahead, Linda.
Hi, yeah. I just wanted to say, Angry, I sent you a DM, and I really would like to talk with you. And the actual topic would be messaging and means for messaging. And so I'm hoping that we will have capability of chatting. And I've done a lot of work in this area over the past few months. Okay, that's it.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Linda. So it is Danny, Ink, Pickled, and Scouts. Go ahead, Danny.
Thanks. Yeah, you can continue to be conservatives, everyone. You don't need to switch sides completely, right? You can continue to be conservative, continue to be centrist, continue to be yourselves. You don't need to change. You just need to vote differently for now, and just bite the bullet for like 4 years and see if the world ends because of it. I think it might end if you don't, though. So pick your battles very carefully. It's not just that it might the fringe might leave, the party might end. We're talking here about democracy itself, right? You might lose that completely. It's really difficult to get back. People will need to die to get it back. I assure you. There's never been any transition to democracy that wasn't difficult, right? And people that want power will fight you for it, with bullets, with knives, with choking you to death with their bare hands. People are insane. They will kill you for it. You will need to fight. I'm not even joking. It's just we've come to a head, right? So either vote for the other guy that you don't feel represents you 100%, but is not a psychopath, maniac, whatever. You cannot not vote as a protest. That's not a protest. That's essentially removing a vote from the people you would want to win potentially. But the other people will vote completely against you, right? And another thing, if you see someone saying, "Oh, you cannot vote for either party," don't trust those people, right? They'll tell you not to vote, and then they'll go vote against you. They'll just say don't, because I'm not, but they will, right? It's just they're gonna lie to you and say, "Oh, there's no point in doing it. It doesn't matter." Well, it does matter. Why would he be talking about it if it didn't matter, right? People are lazy as hell. They won't just say things just to not to influence anyone, right? It's obvious. If they talk to you about it, you should be perceiving them with caution.
Indeed.
So yeah, that's it.
Indeed,
Thanks.
and I did like your point about getting back to democracy. Just ask the republicans of the Roman Empire by the time the Caesars were established. Did it ever come back? Not in 400 years before the empires collapsed, and then it was lost altogether. Even the idea of it for 1,000. So yes, democracy is a precious treasure, and it is one that indeed prevents the terrible violence and the advent of the Dark Age that you very correctly identify.